Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. One Piece. I ate forest mythical fruit and my code name is Green Bull. Chapter 61. What are you doing hiding here? John quickly arrived in front of the teenagers. When he saw the anxious teenagers, he became more relaxed and just asked them curiously. He had specially chosen a deserted place. The place was deserted, and the appearance of a few teenagers surprised him slightly. Looking at John, who was more than 2 meters tall, wearing a navy uniform and a coat of justice, the teenagers felt a huge pressure coming on them, making them nervous and speechless. Finally, Shanks, the youngest, took a breath and replied, "We came to the beach originally to swim, but we didn't expect to meet you, Lord Marine, so we hesitated and didn't dare to go forward." John looked at Shanks in surprise. He found it very interesting. Several other teenagers were so nervous that they could not speak. On the contrary, this seemingly youngest boy was actually able to answer his questions in an orderly manner. "You guys are really not afraid of death when you go swimming at the beach, but are you afraid of me?" John was confused. He could clearly feel that these teenagers seemed to be afraid of him, but he was a navy, not a pirate. Why were these teenagers so afraid of him? "No, we didn't." Except for Shanks, the other teenagers were hesitant and unable to speak complete sentences. John was quite embarrassed. Did he look so fierce? He was in a good mood and didn't pay too much attention to the expressions of these teenagers. He just said, "The beach is too dangerous. You guys should go home quickly. I have to leave too." After saying that, he smiled at the red-haired boy and left. Several teenagers watched John leave dully, and did not react for a long time. It was not until John's back completely disappeared that they slowly came back to their senses. "This navy is so scary." Shanks rolled his eyes. "What's so scary? They've always been friendly." "Well, you guys are too timid. Fortunately, he doesn't know what we are going to do. By the way, now we have to continue to be." "Shut up." As soon as one of the boys was about to say the word pirate, he was interrupted sharply by the oldest boy. He said with a serious face, "Just pretend what happened just now didn't happen. Our plan is on hold for now and we will talk about it after a while. Be sure to take me with you then," Shanks reminded loudly. "We'll see then." None of the other teenagers answered directly. Compared with Shanks' performance, they all felt ashamed. They actually performed worse than Shanks, who was only 9 years old. It was so embarrassing. John, who had already left, didn't know who he had missed. If he could ask more about the red-haired boy's name, maybe in the near future, there would be no pirate named Red Hair. John quickly returned to the warship, and when Garp came back, he immediately went to Garp to ask for the cultivation method to return life. "Do you want to learn how to return life?" Garp looked at John in great surprise, surprised that John knew about life return, and also surprised that John actually wanted to learn how to return life. "Yeah." John nodded heavily. Garp frowned. "Returning life is an advanced physical technique. Only those with a certain level of physical fitness can learn it, and the control of the body must reach a certain limit. It is not so easy to learn. There are many people in the Navy who can return life, but what they have mastered is only superficial, and they can only control a few body parts at most. If you only want to learn some superficial things, I don't recommend you waste time to learn, but if you want to use this ability to a high level, it will take a long time. Are you sure you want to learn it?" Quote. For others, life return is a difficult physical skill to practice, but for Garp, it is very simple. But even he dare not say that he has practiced life return to the highest level. "Definitely, I feel that life return is very suitable for my abilities. If I learn it, it may be of great help to my abilities." John answered in the affirmative. Although he didn't understand life return yet, he was already sure that life return would not disappoint him and would definitely help him complete the long-awaited move. Seeing that John was sure, Garp nodded. "Since you want to learn, then I will teach you. However, it is difficult to get started with life return, but it becomes relatively easy after getting started. It is just that it is very difficult to practice to an advanced level." "I'm okay." John's study of life return is mainly to serve his own fruit ability. It does not mean that he must reach the highest level. As long as he can meet his requirements, it is enough. Next, John's training direction changed again. In addition to the necessary daily training, he also learned to return life with Garp. "It's rare to see my old man so serious. Watching Garp and John get together, one teaching and the other learning, and Garp beating John from time to time, Dorag was filled with emotion. Garp's lieutenant general also said, "Yes, the lieutenant general seems to be very optimistic about this John. It has been a long time since I saw him teach people so seriously. The last time he was teaching you, he was so serious." The corner of Dorag's mouth twitched. When his old man taught him, he was so violent that he was much more barbaric than when he taught John. The warship began to return, leaving the West Sea, returning to the Grand Route, and heading towards the headquarters base. More than 10 days later, after the warship returned to the headquarters, John said goodbye to Garp and the others. Garp has given John the practice method of returning life. Whether he can succeed in the future depends on John's own ability. This requires a process and time. John was not too anxious. After returning to his own yard at the staff headquarters, apart from continuing to train normally with the female soldiers every day, he spent the rest of his time studying the return of life. In the blink of an eye, more than half a year has passed. In a few months, I will be 20. It has been more than 2 years since I came to the Navy headquarters. I don't know what happened to my parents. I really miss them. John stood in the yard full of plants and flowers, looking melancholy. He had been away from home for more than 2 years. Now he has become a captain of the Navy headquarters. If he were placed in the world, he could also become the base commander of a branch. I don't know if it's because he hasn't been home for a long time, but John has been missing his parents and hometown so much lately that he feels a little restless and has trouble doing everything. It's just that as a soldier of the Navy headquarters, without special orders, he cannot leave the headquarters base, let alone cross the Grand Route and return to the South China Sea. Today, John has grown from a boy to a young man. He is about 2.3 meters tall, making him look very tall. His angular face and resolute eyes are very charming. The reason why John thinks he is attractive is because in recent times, the female soldiers under his command have frequently been discharging themselves, making John afraid to continue training with them. He has been hiding from himself for more than 2 months. Yard. I heard from Pemberton that the New World has been very unstable recently, so even lazy people like him have been transferred to the New World. Since following Garp, John has only left the headquarters once, and usually stays at the headquarters. The last time I saw Pemberton was more than 3 months ago. That guy was also transferred to the New World. Pemberton is one of the people with the best relationship among John's classmates. This guy has told John more than once that after making John prosperous, don't forget to take care of him. But John was not worried about Pemberton, because Pemberton went with his uncle. Speaking of Pemberton's uncle, John finally understood why a lazy person like Pemberton could still thrive in the Navy headquarters, because his uncle turned out to be a Rear Admiral of the Navy headquarters. Don't underestimate the Rear Admiral. He is the most powerful naval general besides the generals and lieutenant generals. Putting aside those naval branches, in addition to the generals, there are only a dozen lieutenant generals in the entire Navy headquarters. Being able to become a Rear Admiral in the Navy headquarters is a high position of power. Taking care of Pemberton is naturally a piece of cake. Before Pemberton left, John chatted with him for a while and learned from Pemberton. 3 of the 40 people in their group had died heroically while fighting pirates. Those who were assigned to the branch had average development. Those who stayed in the main branch, except for Sakaski and Porisalino, the rest, including John and the others, basically had their military ranks promoted. However, the top ones currently are Sakaski and Porisalino, who have been promoted to lieutenant colonel, while Dalag is still at the level of major. Apart from these 3 people, John has the highest rank of captain, and the other one who performs best is Vitus. According to what Pemberton said, this guy who John had always looked unhappy with actually became a vice admiral and became his personal soldier, which was considered a blessing. Everyone has their own situation, and John is also filled with emotions. To be honest, he is the most laid back and safest one. He stays at the headquarters base most of the time. Even when he goes out, he is always there. Follow the big shots. John understood that this was the treatment of someone behind the scenes. If he had not been valued by Zephyr and he would probably be like the others now, slowly climbing up step by step. Speaking of classmates at the same time, John suddenly remembered that he seemed to have visited Zephyr once since graduation, and he really felt a little sorry for Zephyr's cultivation. I just feel uneasy, so I went to visit Teacher Zephyr. John walked out of the courtyard. This year Zephyr has been an instructor for the 3rd year. However, compared to John's first class, the quality of the next 2 classes is obviously not as good as John's class. Hey, John, you walked out of the yard today. Are you going to train with us? Not long after he walked out of the yard, John was teased by the female soldiers who had finished their training. John could only smile bitterly at this. Most of the female soldiers here were older than him. He had been here for more than a year and everyone was familiar with them. Even if he was teased, he could only respond with a smile. I'm going to visit General Zephyr, so I won't be with you. After saying hello, John ran away. He didn't want to be entangled with these female soldiers. In the Navy headquarters, female soldiers were treated much more favorably than male soldiers. He couldn't afford to offend these women. The Navy headquarters is very large, and Zephyr's training ground is far from the staff headquarters. In addition, Zephyr is usually very busy. This is one of the reasons why John rarely sees Zephyr. When John found Zephyr, Zephyr was training new recruits at the training ground, and he took the initiative to walk over. Teacher Zephyr. Zephyr turned around and saw John, and suddenly looked surprised. John, why are you here? John smiled and said, I haven't seen you for a long time, teacher, so I thought I would come over and see how you are doing. What can I do? That's great, but you, boy, are the staff really so busy? John smiled awkwardly and took the initiative to change the subject. Teacher, are these your students in this period? As soon as he mentioned the students, Zephyr's serious expression suddenly became kind. This is already the 3rd batch of students. There are many good talents in this batch. Although the whole batch is not as good as yours, there is an outstanding young man among them. Even compared to the original batch, Sakaski, not bad at all. Oh, John suddenly looked shocked. Sakaski was the strongest in their period. Only Porosalino could compare with him. There was someone in this period who could match Sakaski. Could it be? Teacher, which one are you talking about? Zephyr pointed to a 2-meter-plus young man who was exercising. That's him. His name is Kuzan. He is extremely talented, has great physical fitness, and works very hard. He will definitely be comparable to you and Sakaski in the future. Among the first batch of students, Zephyr was most satisfied with Sakaski and John. As for the other Porosalino, although Zephyr recognized his talent, he did not recognize his attitude, so he almost no more compliments to Porosalino in public. Kuzan. Hearing this name, John knew in his heart that Zephyr was right. Kuzan was indeed a genius no less than Sakaski. One of the 3 future admirals of the Navy, a man who could fight Sakaski for 10 days and 10 nights, and was ultimately defeated. As Kuzan originally a recruit from the 3rd phase. In this way, the 3 future generals of the Navy have already joined the Navy. To be praised so highly by Teacher Zephyr, it seems that he is really extraordinary. Zephyr had a smile on his face. To be honest, he had brought students from 3 periods, and the ones that fit his best were John from the 1st period and Kuzan from this period. Although Sakaski is strong, he is too extreme. Zephyr thinks highly of him, but is not very satisfied with him in some aspects. He can only be regarded as one of the most proud disciples, and the relationship between them is not close. Among the first batch of students, Zephyr's closest friend was John. In his opinion, Kuzan was somewhat similar to John, and he liked him very much. He was also the recruit he paid most attention to. John, you came to me today not just to see me, but is there anything else? Zephyr looked at John with a scrutinizing gaze. He knew this disciple quite well. Sometimes he was very understanding of the world, but sometimes he was rather forgetful, especially when he was focusing on one thing. Everything else may be ignored. John chuckled. Teacher Zephyr is really amazing, he guessed what I was thinking right away. Teacher, Lieutenant General, he told me before that the New World is not stable recently. She is likely to lead a team to the New World. I will also go with her then, so I came here today. In addition to seeing you, I need to say goodbye to you. Zephyr couldn't help but frown. Sengoku and Garp are already in the New World, and now even Crane has to go there. Is the New World really chaotic to this extent? In the past 2 years, he has focused on education and does not know much about political affairs. He does not know much about the specific situation of the New World. But now even the 3 giants of the Navy are dispatched, which shows that the new world must be very unstable. Zephyr, who still holds the position of Navy Admiral, will inevitably be a little worried. John, if you arrive in the new world, remember not to get too ahead of yourself. You are still far from good now. Your priority is to protect yourself. Your time is in the future, not now. Zephyr solemnly told John. Although as a naval admiral and teacher, it was a bit inappropriate to say this, but Zephyr really thought about John. He didn't want John to be too greedy for merit and cause himself to be injured and have an accident. Although John is pretty good now, he is still very young, and compared to the great pirates in the New World, he is still too young. In a few years, Zephyr may not have such worries, but now, he has to worry that no matter how steady-tempered John is, he is still just a young man after all. He is not afraid of 10,000, but just in case. Teacher, don't worry, I still understand the principle of seeking good fortune and avoiding misfortune. You also know that I have super strong power of knowledge and information. There are not many better than me in predicting danger and escaping. John said with a smile. He valued his life more than anything else, so naturally he would not put himself in danger. As long as you understand. Looking at John, Zephyr's eyes suddenly became very complicated. He patted John on the shoulder and said, "Kid, protect yourself. I'm still looking forward to the day when you can be crowned a general." John smiled confidently. There will be a day. Next, John's eyes glanced at the new recruits who were training. Teacher, besides Kuzan you just mentioned, are there any other powerful newcomers? There are a few good ones, for example. John was chatting with Zephyr. Not to mention, there were 2 recruits in this period that John was familiar with, and both of them would become naval admirals in the future. More than half an hour later, John said goodbye to Zephyr and left the training ground. Teacher Zephyr, who was that person just now? Just after John left for a while, a man wearing a hat with a Navy logo on his head came over, winked, and asked Zephyr in a very familiar manner. Zephyr couldn't help but let out a long sigh. This person was Kuzan, whom he had just told John. He was very satisfied with everything about Kuzan, but he felt very helpless because of his funny character. Many people don't know that the future Admiral Aokiji is actually a very funny guy. If you don't train seriously all day long, you just know how to ask this and that. Don't you want to know who that person was just now? He is your senior, one of my first students, a genius among geniuses. You are better than he's, not even close. Of course, this is Zephyr's nonsense. Putting aside the fruit ability and the domineering power of knowledge, in terms of physical skills, Kuzan's talent is actually even better than John's. Because Kuzan has not yet obtained the devil fruit, all his energy is focused on physical skills, but at the beginning, John had almost half of his energy on fruit development. In terms of physical skills, Kuzan is naturally not as skilled. It's just that Zephyr still said this, in order to motivate Kuzan. He knew that Kuzan seemed to be out of touch, but in fact he was still very proud. He had a motivational goal. For Kuzan, it was absolutely as a good thing. More genius than me. At this time, Kuzan didn't know what modesty meant. Since joining the Navy, he had never met an opponent among his peers. Even if he joined Zephyr's elite class, he was the only one in his class. Now that he heard that someone was even more talented than him and about the same age, Kuzan immediately became interested. Of course, his name is Lion John, a real genius. Compared with you now, you are still far behind. Kuzan was immediately dissatisfied. That's just because he joined the Navy 2 years earlier than me. If I were in the same class as him, he might not be as good as me. Haha, there's no point in talking. If you have the energy, go and train quickly. John trains much harder than you. Isn't it just training? Is this a thing to me? Lionel John, right, I remember him. Sooner or later, I will challenge him and defeat him. Kuzan shouted a few words as if swearing, and then ran to train with high spirits. Zephyr looked at Kuzan's back, and his serious face gave a rare smile. It seemed that his provocation was effective. This is a rare good thing. Originally, Zephyr was still thinking about what method to use to make Kuzan calm down and train hard. John's appearance was just right. For these students, Zephyr spent a lot of energy. Among this batch of students, Kuzan is unique, so it's not easy to compare with others. Unlike John's group, Porosalino, Sakaski, Dorag, John, etc., many talented elites inspired each other to create the reputation of the first group of recruits. Although the recruits in the next two phases are also good, there is still a big gap compared to the first phase. It is my greatest wish and interest for the rest of my life to continuously cultivate new blood for the Navy. A few days later, Crane summoned John and told him about going to the New World. John, this time I went to the New World not to fight, but to stay in the New World to prevent those pirates from messing around, killing people, and destroying the lives of ordinary people. Are you sure you want to go with me? Yes, Lieutenant General, I have been looking forward to this day for a long time. John's face was full of excitement and he was ready to move. He had been in this world for more than 19 years. He had always longed for the legendary New World. Now that he finally had the opportunity, how could he not go? You are really high-spirited. Why do you want to go there so much? Do you want to fight the pirates there? He could see what John was thinking. It was normal for young people to be competitive. Since John wanted to see the New World, she would do as he wished. If there is really a chance to fight those big pirates, let John see the gap between him and those big pirates. Now that you have made your decision, follow me and set off in 2 days. Yes, Lieutenant General. John was overjoyed. He could finally go to the New World. He had been looking forward to this day for a long time. Lieutenant General, in addition to us, will the female soldiers under your command also go with us this time? He looked at John in surprise and said with a smile, you are still worried about them. It seems that the training of getting along day and night has also allowed you to develop feelings. As soldiers under my command, they will naturally follow me, but only some of them will go with us, but the rest have not met the requirements and are not qualified to go on the expedition. John breathed a sigh of relief. He was indeed worried about those female soldiers. Although they would always tease him, they actually had a very good relationship. The New World was so dangerous, and he didn't want those young female soldiers to suffer in the New World. As a staff officer, we will not participate in the war unless it is a critical moment. I know you are eager to fight. After arriving in the New World, I will hand you over to Sengoku and Garp on the front line. I hope you will not give in when the time comes. Our staff is in disgrace. John replied confidently. Lieutenant General, don't worry, I will never embarrass the staff. Having confidence is a good thing. I don't expect you to make great achievements. Preserving yourself is the most important thing. In the future, the Navy will still need the support of young people like you. What he and Zepha said were almost the same, which made John even more grateful. Both of them were elders who were really good to him. 2 days later, John followed Lieutenant General He and left the Navy headquarters base, accompanied by 2 warships. This time he brought 200 female soldiers. In order to avoid embarrassment, John did not take the He's warship, but stayed on another warship. Although he was not familiar with the people on this warship, he always easier than being on a ship with a bunch of female soldiers. Unlike pirates, the Navy can directly pass through the Red Continent if they want to go to the New World. However, they need to change ships when passing through the Red Continent. This is not the first time that John has passed through the Red Continent. The last time he came to the Grand Route from the South China Sea, he also passed through the Grand Route. There were no disturbances during the journey to the Grand Line. After a few days, we reached the New World in the second half of the Grand Line from the Paradise in the first half. Is this the New World? As soon as he entered the New World, John looked around curiously, but there was nothing but the boundless sea. There is no difference between the first half and the second half of the Grand Line. If there is a difference, it is that the forces in the 2 places are different. The number of pirates in the New World far exceeds that in the first half of the Grand Line. The strength of the pirates also far exceeds that in the first half of the Grand Line. Different from the beginning of the One Piece anime, the current Navy has 5 branches in the New World: G1, G3, G5, G7, and G9. All 5 branches are commanded by vice admirals and are very powerful. However, a few years ago, when the Rocks Pirates rose up and swept the New World, 2 naval branches were defeated by the Rocks Pirates, and they have not yet returned to their heyday. 2 or 3 years after the Rocks Pirates were wiped out, the layout of the New World was pretty good, and the Navy could still control it. However, with the rise of great pirates such as Golden Lion, Roger, and Whitebeard, the layout of the New World was once again changed. The change. In today's new world, the golden lion is considered a dominant family, and its forces are spread across many places in the new world. Although Whitebeard and Roger are famous, there is only one pirate group and no power or territory. Compared with Charlotte Lingling's power still weak. However, Whitebeard and Roger are super powerful. Even if they only have their own pirate group, their momentum is stronger than Charlotte Lingling, who has many territories. These two people are also the only two people in the New World who can be as famous as the Golden Lion. The Big Pirate. In addition to these four people, some pirates who used to belong to the Rocks Pirates also formed their own pirate groups, and they were all very powerful. For example, Captain John's pirate group, Silver Axe, Wang Ji, Kaido, etc. have all become famous and are famous pirates. The reason why the Navy transferred the three giants Sengoku, Garp and Suru to the New World at the same time this time was because of the changes in the Golden Lion pirates. The Golden Lion didn't know why he went crazy, but he actually launched an offensive against the Navy branch G7. Using his terrifying abilities, he almost destroyed the G7 branch, killing and injuring a large number of soldiers, and even the lieutenant general who was in charge of the branch was brutally murdered. Sora could no longer tolerate such arrogant behavior, so he immediately mobilized the three giants of the Navy to prepare to attack the pirates in the New World. Because after the Golden Lion took action against the Navy, many pirate forces actually responded and were ready to take action, leading to the arrival of the most chaotic era in the New World since the destruction of the Rocks Pirates. John and the others' destination this time was the G1 branch of the Navy. The G1 branch is the largest branch of the Grand Line. It is located in the second half of the New World. It is also the G1 base that was later exchanged with the Navy's headquarters, Malinfando. The location of the G1 branch is somewhat similar to that of the Navy headquarters. Marinafando is located on one side of the Red Continent, while the G1 branch is located on the other side of the Red Continent. They are both relatively close to the Red Continent. Because of the geographical location, when the Navy targets the New World, it usually chooses to locate its headquarters in the G1 branch. 3 warships entered the G1 branch base one after another, and John followed the others and walked off the warship. "Hey, John." When John saw it, it was Pemberton and Porosalino, which made him very happy, and he walked over quickly. "Pelusalino, Pemberton, why are you here? Do you know that I am coming? Did you come here specifically to greet me?" Porosalino punched John with a smile. "John, it's okay. You've grown so tall. You can catch up with me in a few years." John also punched Porosalino hard and said with a smile, "You haven't changed, you are still so wretched." "You are so wretched," Porosalino scolded back dissatisfied. Since graduation, Porosalino and Sakazuki left for the New World not long after, so they haven't seen each other for more than a year. After not seeing each other for more than a year, Porosalino has also become a lieutenant colonel. It seems that he has made some achievements in the New World. John looked at Pemberton again. Pemberton was still the same as before, not much changed. "Why haven't you seen Sakazuki?" Porosalino replied. "Both Sakazuki and Delog went out for inspection, and it will probably take 2 days before they can come back." Pemberton said, "I heard that you will be transferred to the Warring States General. We specially selected a dormitory for you, right next to us. John, do you want to live with us or with Lieutenant General He's daughter? Do the soldiers live together?" Lieutenant General He had told John before that he would be transferred to the front line. Unexpectedly, Pemberton and the others already knew about it as soon as he arrived at the G1 branch, and even arranged a dormitory for him. "Roll." John glanced at Pemberton and said, "Let's go back to the dormitory first." The G1 branch base is very large. Even if it accommodates hundreds of thousands of troops, it will not feel crowded. Each soldier has his own residence. Soldiers with lower military ranks have several people in one dormitory. The higher the military rank, the larger the living area. Good. Captains like John, who are already mid-level officers in the Navy, can have their own personal quarters. It can be seen that Porosalino and Pemberton have a strong relationship, so they directly arranged John's dormitory next to them, which saved John a lot of effort. There weren't many things to pack. After John put down the things he brought with him, he started chatting with Porosalino and the others. "John, let me tell you, it's better to be comfortable at the headquarters base. You don't know, this new world is too troublesome. As soon as he was free, Porosalino complained to John, his expression undisguisedly depressed. Is it that exaggerated? John was puzzled. If you don't believe it, ask Pemberton. He has been here for a few months and knows something about the situation. When John looked over, Pemberton nodded. Porosalino is right, it is indeed a mess here. I have been here for more than 3 months and have fought against pirates more than a dozen times. Many comrades, they've all been sacrificed, and the pirates here are much stronger than in the first half. Although Roger has not yet become the pirate king, and the era of great pirates has not yet come, and the number of pirates in the New World is not as large as it will be many years later, the pirates in the New World are definitely of higher quality than those in the Four Seas and the first half of the Grand Line. Much more. Cowell, Balut, they all died in the recent battles. Several of us in the same period have already sacrificed their lives. Speaking of this, Pemberton was even more emotional, and even Porosalino was silent. We are all classmates and comrades who have been together for a year. When we suddenly see our companions die, we naturally feel very uncomfortable. Okay, why are you thinking so much? There is no immortality in the army. Just relax. Seeing that both John and Pemberton were somewhat silent, Porosalino was the first to wake up from his sadness and used his usual funny tone to persuade John and the others. Porosalino is right, sacrifice is inevitable, there is no need to be too sad. Pemberton also said. John changed the subject. I don't know much about the situation in the New World. Please tell me carefully. Porosalino stayed for a longer time, so he said, actually, in my opinion, pirates are all the same, none of them are good, but there are some among them, and some are as powerful as golden lions. Even if the Warring States general took action, but they still couldn't take him down, as well as the Whitebeard pirates, Roger pirates. Porosalino's stay in the New World for more than a year was not in vain. The major forces in the New World were listed in detail. John had been listening carefully. He found that he knew the top pirate groups. He had also heard of a few of the remaining large pirate groups, but most of them were unheard of. John had never heard of these large pirate groups, and they must have disappeared forever before Straw Hat Luffy went to sea. I just heard what Porosalino said. Many of these pirate groups that he had never heard of were super powerful. Even if they were not as good as the top Golden Lion and others, they were still first-rate pirates. They were offering bounties, gold 500 million upwards. John was stunned for a moment after hearing this. Are all the great pirates in the New World so fierce? After understanding it, he finally understood why the Navy headquarters was so serious about sending 3 naval giants, Sengoku, Garp and Crane, to the New World at the same time. It's not that the Navy headquarters is overqualified, it's really that if you want to shock the New World, just relying on a naval admiral is completely insufficient. Porosalino said that after such a long time, he had killed hundreds of pirates, and this was when he was paddling. Sakazuki, who came with him, was even more crazy, he was simply a pirate harvester. In today's G1 branch, no matter who is a soldier, he has heard of Sakazuki's name. As long as he goes to deal with pirates, there will be almost no survivors and he will kill them when they are caught. This makes all the fellow Navy soldiers crazy. Feel fear. John was not surprised at all by Sakazuki's behavior. He had already seen Sakazuki's madness towards pirates. Although this man was extreme, he also had his own justice. In John's opinion, compared to these people, Sakazuki is more like a qualified navy, a pure hawkish navy. John, I'm not telling you, it's so comfortable to stay in the staff department. If you have to find trouble, come to the New World to wade in the muddy waters. Porosalino looked like he hated iron, as if he wished he could replace John and return to the Navy headquarters. John rolled his eyes at Porosalino. He didn't want to be carefree, but he knew that this was not realistic at all. How chaotic the future world would be. He knew better than anyone else that if he didn't have enough strength, how could he possibly do it? Peace of mind. The conference room of the G1 branch base. Not long after he arrived at the base, Sengoku was brought to the conference room to prepare for discussions. The conference room was very large, with several people sitting around a round table. As the general, Sengoku sat at the head of the table, flanked by Garp and Crane, and on both sides were the lieutenant generals and major generals left behind in the G1 base. There were only 10 people in total. The main purpose of convening today's meeting is to deal with the increasingly rampant pirate forces. It is the duty of our navy to maintain the peace of the sea. But now that pirates are overflowing in the New World and are becoming more rampant, they must be severely suppressed. As a naval admiral, Sengoku's power was second only to that of the Navy Marshal Sora. He should have been on standby at the Navy headquarters base, but the situation in the New World was too chaotic, so he had to be allowed to sit in the New World. The reason why the pirate power is so huge, in the final analysis, is actually the fault of the world government. The world government wants to use pirates to achieve its own goals, so it has always allowed the existence and development of pirates. The existence of pirates has indeed brought great benefits to the world government. In order to avoid the intrusion of pirates, many places and countries can only pay a large amount of wealth to be protected by the world government. Of course, the world government will not benefit from such benefits. Will refuse. Under the control of the world government, it has always been difficult for pirates to have much impact on the world, but this all changed many years ago. More than 10 years ago, a pirate named Rox D. Jibak appeared, bringing the evil force of pirates to its peak. Rox himself was the most evil and powerful pirate of that era. For his own ambitions, he gathered most of the top pirates in the world to form the Rox Pirates, which swept the entire New World. The Rox Pirates of that era were the strongest overlords of the New World. They were even so big that Rox's ambitions reached the extreme, wanting to destroy the celestial dragons who had ruled the world for 800 years. Although the Rox Pirates were destroyed in the end, it was not because the Rox Pirates were weak, but because there were many conflicts within the Rox Pirates and they were not united. If the pirates of the Rox Pirates could work together at that time, even if the navy led by Garp and the Roger Pirates joined forces, they would definitely not be their opponent. But Rock's destruction is so realistic. He only wants to rule the pirate group with tyranny and strength, but ignores the hearts of the pirate group. In the final battle, more than half of the pirates were paddling. After he was defeated, they even took away his treasure and fled. The huge Rox pirate group fell apart in an instant. After the destruction of the Rox pirates, the pirates in the New World suffered a blow and were indeed depressed for a while. But with the rise of Golden Lion and others, the New World has become crazy again. Although it is not as rampant as Rock's era, the power of pirates is more complicated, and the Rising Star Pirate is definitely not worse than Rock's. A vice admiral present here, who is the commander of the G1 branch base, said, "We have fought against all the major pirate forces in the New World. Although we don't want to admit it, we have to admit that if we don't pay a certain amount of money, we will have to fight against them. I'm afraid it will be difficult to eradicate them." Golden Lion, Whitebeard, Roger, Charlotte Lingling, John. Warring States named a dozen big pirates in succession. These pirates were the ones with the highest bounties. It was precisely because of the existence of these pirates that the Navy suffered repeated setbacks. We have all fought against these pirates. They are all difficult characters to deal with. If we want to defeat them, we cannot do it in a short time. We need to fight for a long time. In addition to the New World, there are many pirates in the first half of the Grand Line and the Four Seas, but overall, they are relatively stable. As long as there are no major problems in those sea areas, the main force of the Navy can be stationed in the New World and carry out a protracted war with the pirates in the New World. The Warring States period talked a lot, but basically what everyone said was already known, and the key issues were not pointed out. Looking at Garp's head bit by bit, you can get a glimpse of it. Sengoku, who was closest to Garp, could of course see Garp's condition, and saw that the veins on his forehead were popping out. Garp, what's the matter? Is it finished? Garp suddenly raised his head and looked around with a confused expression. Finally, when he saw Sangwo's angry look about to explode, his expression suddenly changed. He sat upright with a serious face, as if he was listening attentively. Those present were all high-ranking officials in the Navy. They already knew who Garp was, and they were all suppressing laughter. Warring States' clenched fist slowly unclenched. He couldn't do anything about Garp, and now in the meeting, he couldn't get angry. "I'm not worried about fighting pirates, because we have too many outstanding soldiers and officers in the Navy. However, we have a very serious problem at the moment. Lucian, please tell me." The person whose name was called by Sengoku was Major General Lucian in charge of logistics, and he spoke immediately. "Our biggest problem now is food. The G1 branch base rarely gathers so many soldiers. The food in stock has long been used up. Now it is all transported from the Red Earth continent. But the situation over there, a little complicated. At this point, Lucian paused, obviously worried about something, and did not continue. Every time the food is delivered, it is difficult to deliver it on time, and there is also a problem with the quantity. Many soldiers do not have enough to eat. In this situation, it is not a big problem for a day or two, but as time goes by, the problem becomes serious. The expressions of the few people present changed slightly. No matter where you are, food is the most important thing, especially during war. Without food, no matter how strong you are, it is useless. Although the Navy is not short of money, it does not mean that it will have sufficient food. Even the Navy headquarters does not dare to say that there will always be enough food. Nowadays, there are tens of thousands of naval soldiers gathered in the G1 branch base. People in this world eat a lot, not to mention soldiers, who can definitely eat more than twice that of ordinary people. The more intense the battle, the more food is consumed. One person can eat several people, and the amount of more than a dozen people is no longer a handful. The G1 base is located in the New World. Even if food can be transported from the Red Earth continent, what kind of virtue are those people on the Red Earth continent? They have to pluck their feathers when geese pass by. How can they transport enough food to the G1 base? As a result, the soldiers stationed at the G1 base suffered a lot. Many of them did not have enough to eat and had caused many problems. Although they were suppressed all the time, if they were not solved, the pirates would not be wiped out. The people inside were shattered. The food problem has existed for some time. Warring States was so anxious that he even went to Wu Laoxing directly, but the reply he got was not very satisfactory to him. Wu Laoxing even said that they should use special methods in special times. Of course Warring States understood what Wu Laoxing meant, but he couldn't do the key. Do they want their navy to rob ordinary people's food like pirates? What's more, the food they need is not just a tiny bit. Such a large amount of food, even if purchased from the underground world, will take a long time to raise. The navy simply cannot afford to wait, and it does not have that much mobile military expenditure. The powerful people have plenty of food and clothing, but the people below are hungry and full. This is the norm. Everyone else was silent. Except for he who just came over. Everyone here already knew about it, but they didn't have a good way to solve it. Warring States rubbed his head irritably and turned to look at he, Xiaohe, do you have any good ideas? Although he asked, Warring States didn't have much hope. So many of them didn't think of a good way. Even if he was very smart, he didn't think he could think of a way quickly. But what shocked him was that he put his chin in his hands and answered calmly, it's a simple matter. Simple. Everyone was stunned and looked at he in disbelief. He asked them all questions, but he actually said it was simple. Xiaohe, are you kidding us? Warring States asked hesitantly. Lieutenant General, he looked at him calmly, what do you think? What do you mean? If you raise other issues, I may not find it simple, but the food issue should still be no problem. I have a way to get enough food. Warring States asked doubtfully, you brought food here? No, you can't bring much food. Xiaohe, tell me what's going on. He smiled slightly. It's true that I can't conjure food, but someone can. When no one else understood what it meant, Garp suddenly slapped the table hard. I understand. His suddenness startled everyone else, and Warring States even yelled angrily, Garp, what do you understand? Are you just yelling and screaming here? Garp snorted with disdain. Warring States, you are still a wise general. I have figured out such a simple question, but you haven't figured it out yet. You are not worthy of your name. Warring States was speechless after being retorted by Garp. He really didn't understand what was happening. Okay, you said you understand, then tell me, what's going on, who can conjure food? Garp sarcastically said. Stupid, of course it's John. John, who is that? Warring States didn't react. As for the others, let alone them, they didn't know who John was. Garp said anxiously. Warring States, have you forgotten? John is Zepha's first recruit, that boy who is born with knowledge, color and domineering. Warring States thought for a moment and then suddenly realized, so you are talking about him, but how can he conjure food? As a naval admiral, the Sengoku government was very busy. Before John graduated, he had already arrived in the New World. Although he had returned to the Navy headquarters several times during the process, he had no time to take care of the new recruits. Therefore, he had long forgotten who John was. It was not until Garp talked about the domineering nature of being born with knowledge, and color that he remembered that John was the only one in the Navy who was born with the domineering spirit of knowledge, and color, which was easy to identify. As for the others, they all looked at each other in confusion. They didn't know who John was, but looking at Garp and Sengoku, it seemed that they were not simple people. They were actually born with knowledge and domineering. This was the first time they had heard of him. Such people exist. Before Garp could speak, he explained, John is a devil fruit user. He can catalyze the growth of plants. He can catalyze the seeds to mature in a short time. Crops are also plants. To him, it does not catalyze the growth of crops. It's not difficult. Really, Warring States stood up in surprise. He really didn't know that there were people with this kind of fruit ability in the Navy. If what he said was true, then the food problem could indeed be said to be very simple. He answered affirmatively. Of course, fortunately I brought him here this time, otherwise, it would have been delayed for a few days. Then what are you waiting for? Call him over quickly. Warring States couldn't wait any longer. Dong dong. John was chatting with Porosalino and Pemberton in the dormitory. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. When he opened it, he saw that it was a colonel with the rank of naval colonel. John immediately saluted, and before he could speak, the colonel asked, "Are you Lyons John?" "Yes, I am." John didn't know why, but answered anyway. "Hurry and follow me. The Warring States general wants to see you." Ah, John looked confused. He was not familiar with Sangguo. Why did Sangguo want to see him for no reason? "Why are you still standing there? Come with me quickly," the colonel urged. John didn't dare to delay, turned to Porosalino and Pemberton and shouted, "I'm leaving first." After watching John leave, Porosalino asked Pemberton in confusion, "Why does the Warring States general want to see John? Has this kid done something amazing again?" Pemberton didn't understand either. "Who knows, but my vision is indeed correct. John is extraordinary. As soon as he arrived at the base, the Warring States general wanted to see him. We have never had such treatment." Porosalino pondered for a while, then suddenly rolled his eyes and said to Pemberton, "I'll stay here and wait for John. You can go and do whatever you want." But Pemberton was not that easy to fool. He looked at Porosalino with suspicion. "Porosalino, are you trying to steal John's money while he's away?" "Nonsense." Porosalino suddenly changed his color and shouted angrily, "Am I, Porosalino, that kind of person?" Pemberton's eyes became even more contemptuous. "Why are you pretending to me? Who doesn't know who you are? You stole John's money not once or twice, right?" Porosalino, who was still arrogant at first, suddenly stopped and hummed dissatisfied. "This guy John is just unreliable. Why don't I just lend him money a few times? As for spreading it everywhere, it will damage my reputation. No, I want to ask him for reputation damage compensation. This guy's gangster logic is also excellent. He only wants to steal money and doesn't want others to publicize it. Are you the only one who still has a reputation or notoriety?" Pemberton's chubby round face is almost squeezed together, and his eyes are even smaller and sarcastic. "Pemberton, have I given you any shame? I owe John money, but I don't owe you money. Why are you so arrogant?" Porosalino yelled at Pemberton unhappily, "Do you want to experience my light-speed kick?" Whispering sound. Pemberton was unhappy when he saw that Porosalino could not resist the threat of force, but thinking about the power of Porosalino's light-speed kick, he did not continue to mock him. Porosalino ignored Pemberton's presence and glanced around the several bags that John had brought, finally landing on one of them. John has a habit of never treating himself badly. As long as he goes out, he will definitely bring enough money. He can't put so much money on his body. Although these 3 bags are similar, based on my understanding of him, the money must be in this bag. As he spoke, he unzipped the bag and continued, "John is very defensive. He will not just put money in the bag casually. He will choose to hide it, just like this." After groping for a while, Porosalino took out a piece of clothing and took out a wad of banknotes from the pocket of the clothing. "See, I'm an expert when it comes to finding money." Pemberton kept watching, and was dumbfounded by Porosalino's familiar movements. He said harshly, "Did you steal money and gain experience?" John is right, you are indeed vulgar and shameless. Porosalino didn't care at all. He counted the money with a smile, and then rearranged the messed up packages. Pemberton didn't quite understand when Porosalino didn't refute and counted money with a money-obsessed look on his face. Porosalino, are you short of money? I see you got a lot of bonuses for catching pirates, why are you still stealing John's money now? Porosalino looked dissatisfied. What is stealing? This is borrowing, of course I am short of money. The salary in the Navy is so low. Even if there is a bonus, I can't afford to spend it. There are too many places to use money. Despite his usual lazy and wretched appearance, in fact, his family background is not bad, he has not been short of money since he was a child, and he lives a good life. Although the Navy was good, to be honest, the salary he received was really not as good as the life he lived before. Pemberton was still puzzled. How did you spend so much money? You don't lack anything, right? Porosalino suddenly looked at Pemberton with a strange look, which made Pemberton panic. What's that look like? Porosalino said, I'm just wondering, how could you ask this question? Even John knows what I want to do. You are usually so smart, but you don't know how I spend money. This made Pemberton even more confused. John knew everything, but he didn't. Is he short-sighted? I saw Porosalino's expression change, and he tried hard to become sunny and upright. I spend a lot of my money on great causes and helping others, do you understand? Helping others? Are you going to help poor people? Impossible, you are not that kind of person at all. Pemberton shook his head repeatedly and refused to believe that Porosalino would help others. If he didn't deceive others, it would be good, but he would help others for fun. Isn't that funny? I really have nothing in common with you, and I don't know how you have spent these years helping others and rescuing lost girls. Do you understand? Fog. Pemberton felt as if he had been electrocuted. He screamed and jumped up, pointing at Porosalino in shock. My fingers were shaking for a long time, my lips were trembling, and I finally managed to hold back a sentence. You are so shameless and vulgar. We are all men, so we didn't understand it before, but when he said the words, rescuing the lost girl, Pemberton didn't understand it. It's just that he had never thought about it before, and he didn't have this concept at all. Porosalino said contemptuously, this is human nature and physiological needs. You are older than me. Don't you understand such a simple truth? Pemberton was speechless. He didn't know anything. He was older than Porosalino, but he really didn't understand this aspect. After holding it in for a long time, his face turned red, and he asked again, even if it is that, it doesn't need to cost so much, right? Well, Porosalino looked at Pemberton with a sad face. I really feel pity for you. Qingqiao, do you know what Qingqiao is? When you go to help people, can you not buy something? The more you give, the more you get, the more tricks you have. Forget it, look at you, I don't understand the mood, so it's pointless to tell you this. After counting the money, Porosalino stuffed the money into his pocket. This money is enough for me to live happily for a while. Unfortunately, Sakaski is not here this time, so I can only go alone. What? Pemberton felt that he couldn't turn his head around, and his whole body was in a mess. He heard correctly, the person Porosalino just mentioned was Sakaski. No way, Sakaski will do it too. This is impossible, how could he? Wu Cow. Pemberton felt that his worldview had been refreshed. No wonder he was not as good as Porosalino and the others. He had not noticed it before, but now he realized that his level was too low. Seeing that Porosalino had walked some distance away, he suddenly shouted, Porosalino, wait, I'll come with you. John followed the colonel in front of him, walked inside the G1 base, and came to a group of buildings. Boom. The colonel took John to the door of the conference room and knocked gently on the door. Come in. Pushing the door open, the colonel immediately responded, General Waring states, Lyons John has been brought. After seeing John, Waring states nodded, well, you go out first. Yes. John quickly glanced around and found that among the people sitting on the round table, the ones with the lowest military rank were all major generals. This made him slightly uneasy. He wondered what the purpose of Waring States calling him here was. You are John. Waring States looked at John curiously. This was the first time he saw John. He was also somewhat curious about this newcomer who was praised highly by Zepha. He had already met Sakaski and Porisalino, and he wanted to know what kind of qualifications this John, who was judged by Zepha, would be no worse than those two in the future, worthy of Zepha's high regard. Yes, John answered respectfully. It was also his first official meeting with warring states. Sengoku looked to be in his 40s, with frog eyes, a long beard on his chin tied into a twist, a navy hat, a white military uniform and a justice coat. The feeling of the warring states period for John was that of elegance. This admiral looked very elegant. I asked you to come here because there is an important matter that requires your cooperation. Warring states said straight to the point. I heard that you can make plants grow, right? Yes. John didn't know what warring states meant, so he could only answer simply. Crops, too. Okay, as long as it's a plant, it should be fine. Warring states suddenly beamed with joy and continued to ask, if you were allowed to make crops, how many people could you supply? John looked troubled. This question really stumped him. He could produce crops, such as corn, sweet potatoes, etc. Even wheat and millet, as long as they were plants, he could produce them. But he really couldn't tell how many people it could supply, because he had never tested it. At this moment, he suddenly said, warring states, he probably can't answer this question himself, so let's do this for today, let him rest for one night, and start action again tomorrow. It just so happens that you also use the fastest speed to go looking for seeds for crops. John keenly noticed that he winked at him when she was speaking, so he immediately followed her words. Yes, I haven't tested it yet, so I can't give a definite answer. Warring states thought for a while and agreed, okay, let's do this for now. I will have someone find you immediately tomorrow morning. Then, he told Major General Lucian, mobilize manpower immediately to buy crop seeds and buy more. Yes, General of the Warring States period. Lucian immediately accepted the order. Let's get here today first, and let's wait until the food problem is solved. Warring states announced the end of the meeting. Originally, there were other topics in the meeting, but when it came to food, they were not considered a big issue. Now he was most concerned about the food issue, but he had to wait until tomorrow morning to talk about it. Everyone left separately, but this time John made these lieutenant generals and major generals remember it in their hearts. If John can really succeed, the future will definitely be limitless. Ha 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 ha, John, if you make a contribution this time, then I will take all the credit. You were recommended by me. Garp still took his signature domineering step, walked up to John with great pride, and winked. John didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Then thank you Lieutenant General Garp. You're welcome, the elders take care of the younger ones, isn't this a natural thing? It was obviously very useful, but Garp just pretended not to care. Okay, Garp, stop talking nonsense, John, come with me. Crane came over, stopped the proud Garp, gave an order to John, then turned around and led away. Lieutenant General Garp, I'll go over first. John said hello to Garp and quickly caught up with he. He was his direct boss and was closer to him than anyone else. Crane took John to the office assigned to her. It was just the two of them. After closing the door, Crane spoke. What do you think about what just happened? Well, John asked tentatively. The Warring States General asked me to make crops. Isn't it because of lack of food? The reason for hesitation is that the Warring States period asked about crops, and those can be counted as food. But he was puzzled. The Navy would still be short of food. A huge navy spread all over the world would also be short of food. He couldn't quite figure this out, so it was strange. You were right, there is a lack of food. His affirmative answer made John unbelievable. Our Navy will also be short of food. Are you kidding me? Even if there is no food, no matter how bad it is, we can still kill some sea kings to satisfy our hunger. It's as simple as you think. He shook his head helplessly. She could see that John really didn't understand anything in this regard. Do you know how many people are in this base now? Excluding the ordinary civilians on the island, the army alone has reached more than 60,000 people. Do you know how much food the more than 60,000 soldiers consume every day? Especially during war, the amount of food has increased exponentially. It's true that the Navy is huge, but this is the new world, not the headquarters. The transportation channels are not as good as the headquarters. In addition, transporting food from the Red Earth continent is not as easy as you think. Sometimes, it doesn't matter if you have money. You can buy food, not to mention, do you think the Navy's military expenditures are endless? Now even the civilians on the island are saving food for the soldiers. We don't have as much food as you think, because this battle with the pirates has lasted for nearly 2 years. How much food do you think we will have? Can you afford it? Pirates are human beings too. If they can't be beaten, they will run away. So, should we chase them or not? If we chase them, it may be a protracted battle. If we don't chase them, they will make trouble again soon. So, sometimes, it's not that we don't want to eradicate pirates, but it's not that easy, especially those large pirate groups, which are even more difficult to deal with and consume a lot of energy and manpower. In the end, they may not achieve what we imagined. Result. He came from the era of Rock's pirates. She knew very well how difficult those big pirates were. The world only remembered that Rocks was destroyed by the Navy and Garp. But little did they know that before Garp suppressed the Rocks pirates, the Navy had studied them for a long time, attacked them countless times, failed countless times, and finally destroyed them after many years. As for what you said, killing the Neptunes, it sounds like a good suggestion, but now we are even stretched to deal with pirates. How can we have the spare capacity to send a large force to kill the Neptunes? Except for the windless zone, the Neptunes are basically being in the deep sea. Searching is troublesome. And even if we can kill Neptunes, the transportation process is still a problem. Ordinary warships may not be able to carry large Neptunes. How many warships do you think we have that can transport Neptunes at any time? What's more, not all sea kings can be used as food. This is a good idea during non-war times, but during wars, it is time-consuming and labor-intensive, and it is far less convenient than transporting food. Quote. John listened attentively. This was the first time he had seen Crane tell him so much and in such detail. After hearing these words, he realized that he had taken it for granted before. The Navy is indeed the #1 military institution on the sea, but the problem is that the Navy is not a celestial dragon clan. Although it has privileges, it is not as good as the nobles in many aspects, let alone the world's noble celestial dragons. He had never thought before that such a large navy would be in trouble for food. He thought that the Navy's food was really inexhaustible. If there is really a food problem, his role will indeed be reflected. No wonder the Warring States Congress eagerly summoned him. Lieutenant General, what did the Warring States General say? That I will start growing crops tomorrow. Although this is a very important way to show his ability, he always feels a little awkward. John, am the man who wants the world of Kylie pirates. Now, I am actually asked to grow food. No matter how you look at it, it is a bit overkill. Is this going to change from the sea position to the auxiliary position? Yes, but you have to control it a little bit. Lieutenant General, I don't understand what you mean. John looked at he in confusion. He felt that there was something wrong with his expression. What do you mean he should be more controlled? Control what? Crane asked. Tell me truthfully, how many crops can you produce in one day if you want to encourage them to grow? John frowned and started to calculate, but after a while, he replied, this is really impossible to calculate. For example, if I try my best to grow corn, I can produce dozens of tons a day, which should be no problem. It's just because I used my power to induce the corn, so although it's not harmful, the taste should be a little worse than normal mature corn. No, it's too much. John was stunned by his words, and he said in astonishment, too many. He nodded and affirmed, yes, too many. John didn't quite understand. Lieutenant General, what do you mean when you say too much? Are you afraid that you won't be able to finish it? It doesn't matter. If you can't finish it, I can make less. He thought he was saying that he made too much and couldn't finish it, but that wasn't a problem at all. He sighed. Although John was sometimes shrewd, he was sometimes dull-headed. What she said was obvious enough, but she still didn't understand. It's not a problem of not being able to finish it, but a problem of you. My question. John was stunned for a moment, then reacted and asked, you mean, I should do less? Crane then looked satisfied, and then looked at John with a serious face. Food is a necessity for everyone. For many people, it is even more in short supply. You can make it, but you must not make too much and destroy the original channels. For you, this ability is not only a shortcut to your development, but it may also become your talisman. Only by controlling it within a certain range and making it acceptable can you better preserve yourself and act in a low-key manner. Hasn't it always been your way of doing things? This time you have to stick to this way. John also became serious and nodded solemnly. Lieutenant General, I understand what you mean. Hadu had already made it so obvious, so he naturally understood what she meant. She could describe it in one word, that is. It is a crime to have a jade. He can produce food on a large scale. If this matter spreads, it will definitely attract attention. With so many people in the world, food is a necessity, and its importance is self-evident. If someone who can change the food industry chain appears in vain, it will definitely bring extremely serious consequences. When the time comes, John will not be able to bear it. Crane wanted to protect him, so he reminded him that food could be produced, but it must not be exceeded. At the very least, it must be acceptable to others and would not change the situation. I'm really stuck in the dust. I've always been thinking about how to develop powerful attack capabilities, but I've ignored many other development directions. If I go into the grain business, who will be my opponent? Although he thinks so in his heart, John has no regrets. With this ability, he will definitely be able to make a lot of money, but if you don't have enough strength, what if you are given more wealth? This is a world where the strong are respected and order is chaotic. Only strength can support everything. Just understand. Pay attention tomorrow. You can be high profile, but not too high profile. He instructed. His words sounded so familiar to John's ears. They were very similar to the officials in his previous life. He could say 3/3 of the meaning in one sentence, and he could figure out the other 7/10 by himself. After talking to he, John went back alone. Just halfway through the journey back, his expression suddenly changed drastically. Not good. John ran away. He was so anxious that he forgot the key thing. He actually left Porosalino in his dormitory. Doesn't that mean that his banknotes were no longer safe? He hurried back to the dormitory, opened his backpack and took a look. He suddenly let out an angry roar. Porosalino. Night is falling. How was the restaurant I took you to today? Was the service good? Hey, nothing to say, you still know how to play. When will we go next time? Oh, today has just ended and you are already thinking about the next time. There is a future. Then what you said, you have to keep up with the team and the times. You all go. Of course I can't fall behind. I'm not familiar with it this time. I must make good use of it next time. Next time, I will take you to another place, but you have to prepare money. Just like this time, you cannot treat guests for this kind of thing. I understand. Don't worry about this. I still have some savings. I can catch a few more pirates in the future. You have a bright future. I'm very optimistic about you. When Sakaski comes back next time, we'll form a team and go together. Porosalino and Pemberton walked arm in arm towards the dormitory, making lewd laughter as they walked. These two students, who had a normal relationship at the same time, have become close friends after what happened today, and their relationship has become very good. The two of them quickly walked to the door of the dormitory, because they were mid-level officers and were paid fairly well. They lived in a 4-story dormitory that could accommodate dozens of people in total. Many people in the dormitory area, like Sakaski, went out to fight pirates or patrol. There were not many people left in the dormitory, so the two of them talked very casually. You two seem very happy. Suddenly a gloomy voice sounded in the ears of the two of them, which shocked both Porosalino and Pemberton. Porosalino reacted very quickly, almost instantly. With a flash of golden light, the other person was gone. Pemberton was left alone, looking in front of him in astonishment where no one could be found, and turned his head in embarrassment. John, why are you here? Seeing the embarrassed expression on Pemberton's face, John shook his head helplessly. It has nothing to do with you. I went to find Porosalino, and this guy actually stole my money again. There should be corn in the pirate world, right? Let me know in advance in case someone tries to challenge me, hehe. Chapter 71. Open the door. Standing in front of Porosalino's door, John shouted in a low voice. After a while, Porosalino opened the door and said lazily, It's already so late, John, why aren't you sleeping yet? I'm very tired today. If there's nothing important, let's talk about it tomorrow. As he said that, he was about to close the door, but John held his door with one hand. No matter how late it is, the accounts that should be settled must still be settled. John didn't give Porosalino a chance to speak, and said directly, "You stole my money again today, plus what you borrowed from me before and what you took secretly. The total is 6,779,400 belly. I will give you the fraction, round up, 7 million belly." "Porosalino, you now owe me 7 million belly." Porosalino suddenly jumped up anxiously. "Is this how you wipe out the change? Also, when did I owe you so much money? Don't try to trick me." "Am I tricking you?" John sneered disdainfully. "Porosalino, you are already a school-level officer after all. Can you please show some respect? I'll give you 7 million baileys. It's an extra favor. If I really want to calculate the interest with you, interest rate, you have already owed me tens of millions of belly." Porosalino's eyes widened. "John, don't be too dark, I'm not someone to be bullied." "What, do you want to admit it?" John's face suddenly froze, his eyes gleaming with cold light. "If you want to deny it, I will have to take other measures." Porosalino blinked. "I'm not scared." "Yeah," John sneered again. "If you don't admit it, I will spread the news that you don't pay back the money you owe, steal money, go shopping." "Okay, I admit it." Porosalino immediately gave up. Although these things were not a big deal, it would not sound good if they were spread out. No matter what he did, he still wanted to save face, and he could not lose his face for such a small amount of money. 7 million. Yes, if you were ruthless, 7 million. John snorted coldly. "Don't think it's too much. You must know that most of my money was taken by you. Charging you some interest is also an advantage for you." Porosalino muttered. "You can't blame me alone for this. You can't slap me. If you hide it well and don't let me find it, I won't take it. I think you just let me know the money on purpose. Where is it? Let me take it away so you can blackmail me." "Ha, so you think so?" John was really defeated by Porosalino's shamelessness, saying that he deliberately let him steal it. Was there something wrong with him? It's not like when he was in the training camp. He didn't have a room of his own, only a dormitory, and the space was limited. Porosalino came a few times. Besides keeping money with him, if he put it in the dormitory, he would definitely find it if he was willing. As for this time, let alone that. He had just arrived at the base and was called away by warring states before he even had time to clean up. There was no time to hide money. "I won't talk nonsense to you. 7 million baileys, how long will it take you to pay me back?" Porosalino suddenly felt embarrassed. "No, John, I already admit it. I really have no money. I owe you first. At worst, I will catch more pirates in the future and I will return it to you after I get the bonus." Quote. "If you can believe it, the sun rises from the west." John didn't think Porosalino could pay back the money quickly. This guy couldn't save money at all. He would waste it if he had money. If he didn't have money, he would either be a coward or steal it from him. What made him depressed was that Porosalino would not steal anyone else's but would steal his. Was he sure that he would not fall out? "I don't have much time to waste time with you today. Just remember how much money you owe me. If I'm short of money and you don't pay it back to me, I'll make you look bad." After saying that, John turned and left, leaving Porosalino alone muttering there. "Even if I don't pay back, what else can you do to me? You can't catch up with me." Early the next morning, as soon as John got up, he was taken away by people sent by the warring states. Behind the G1 base island, there was a huge open space. John was taken to this place. After he arrived, he found that Sengoku and others had already arrived here. John counted and found that there were a few more people in the conference room than yesterday, and those with the lowest military rank were all brigadier generals. Warring States General, Lieutenant General Crane, Lieutenant General Garp. John walked over and only greeted Sengoku, he and Garp. As for the other people, he didn't know them, so he didn't say hello and just saluted them. Warring States waved to John and asked John to come to him. "John, the seeds are ready, have you seen enough?" Looking in the direction that Warring States pointed, John's expression suddenly changed. "Are you so efficient? There are actually 6 big boxes. Are they all filled with seeds?" "Too much, too much. If it is activated with all its strength, although there are many seeds in the 6 boxes, it can quickly mature them. But the key point is that he told him yesterday to keep a low profile. Did Warring States get so many seeds at once to drain him dry? It's okay, you can use it as much as you want, even if you don't use it up, it doesn't matter. Warring States had no idea of John's ability and didn't know how much John could produce in a day, so he got all the crop seeds he could find. This box is rice, this is wheat, this is beans, corn, potatoes. Pointing to the 6 boxes, Warring States explained to John one by one that all the grains and grains were gathered together, as well as some crops unique to this world. Then shall I start now? John asked tentatively. Let's get started. There are open spaces here for you to use as you wish. Do you have any other requirements, such as water, land, fertilizer, etc.? Sengoku didn't know what John's abilities were, so he asked John what he needed. John thought for a while. His ability required physical strength, but since he decided to keep a low profile, it seemed unreasonable if he didn't mention conditions. Food. My ability requires a lot of physical strength and requires enough food, preferably meat. Meat is the fastest way to replenish energy. Warring States immediately said. No problem, I'll have someone prepare it right now. Then I'll start. John walked to a box, opened it, thought about it, grabbed a handful of seeds, then walked to the center of the clearing and scattered the seeds on the ground in front of him. After the seeds fell to the ground, John immediately pressed his hands on the ground and shouted, "Grow!" Under everyone's gaze, they saw that the seeds that had just been scattered on the ground slowly sprouted green teeth and began to grow at a slow rate. More than 5 minutes later, the seeds finally matured and formed a small corn field. The corn slowly grew and matured. It turns out to be true. With such a rapid growth rate, if we can continue to produce it, we will not be short of food. The most excited person was Major General Lucian, who was in charge of logistics. Recently, his hair was turning gray due to food problems. Now that he saw hope, he was of course very excited and wanted to rush over and hug John and kiss him a few times. Call. John exhaled heavily and stood up. His body swayed, his face was pale, and his forehead was covered with sweat. He looked like he was exhausted due to excessive physical exertion. He glanced at the ripe corns, then at John. His expression became very strange, and the corners of his mouth twitched. If others don't understand John, can she still understand him? The Communist Party of China has created a small cornfield of more than 10 square meters, and yet they are so exhausted. Do they really think that others are fools? This kid has gone too far. I asked him to pay attention, but this is what happened. Garp's eyes widened and he glanced at John, who was sweating profusely with a strange look on his face. Although he doesn't know John as well as he does, he also knows that John's ability must be more than that. How tired is he after making so little corn? This wasn't like the John he knew. General of the Warring States period. Fortunately, I succeeded in getting the corn. John and Sengoku replied, and at the same time he breathed out heavily, showing how tired he was. Warring States didn't say anything. Although he didn't know what John's ability was, since he respected it so much, it wouldn't be at this level, right? How many people can feed this little corn? Boy, is this your level? The corn you made is not enough for me to eat for one meal. At this moment, a vice admiral suddenly came out and scolded John with a gloomy face. John glanced over immediately, feeling very dissatisfied. Who is this guy? Although I don't produce much, it's not enough for you to eat for one meal. That's an exaggeration. I still have dozens of kilograms of corn. Are you a loser? However, the opponent was also a lieutenant general, several levels higher than him, and he could not refute it publicly. Warring States was relatively kind and asked, John, can we continue to make it? This amount is far from enough. John wanted to hide his clumsiness, but the current situation did not seem to be good, so he glanced at he calmly. He noticed John's little movement and immediately said, it's probably the first time John has spawned this kind of crop, and he's not very familiar with it yet. Let him rest and try again later. Yes, I didn't control it well just now. I'll eat some food and come back later. John understood what Crane meant, that he was exaggerating, so he quickly spoke to make amends. The food was brought over quickly, and John ignored the eyes of others and ate by himself while thinking in his heart. The quantity he produced just now was very small. In fact, he was testing the thoughts of Warring States and others. If they didn't show anything, then he would come like this. But now it is obvious that the quantity he produced is unacceptable to warring states and others, so they need to re-evaluate. This boy is really calm. He can eat it without noticing. It's my style. Garp stood with he and talked to he in a low voice. The two of them had a lot of contact with John, so they naturally knew more than others. After eating and drinking enough, John stood up again and grabbed a handful of seeds again, but this time there were more seeds. As before, scatter the seeds again, press your hands on the ground, and shout, "Grow." The seeds began to grow, and green teeth emerged. However, this time, the area where the green teeth emerged became much larger, more than 10 times wider than before. Everyone around showed excitement. The amount of corn that John got just now was indeed too small, but this time, the amount has increased so much, and the corn he got must be countless times more than before. Of course, John couldn't slap himself in the face. When he just made more than 10 square meters, it already took about 5 minutes. Now that he was making more, he naturally needed more time. So, John allowed everyone to witness the entire process of corn seeds, from growth, germination, to maturity and fruiting. It lasted for about 20 minutes, and a large cornfield appeared around it, with plump corns growing out one after another. After finishing all this, John didn't stand up at all. He sat down on the ground tiredly, breathing heavily. The corner of his mouth twitched again. "This kid, there is such a big gap between the front and the back, what are you thinking about?" Logistics Major General Lucian became excited again. His eyes shone. "More than 1 acre, more than 1 acre. This yield can at least reach more than 1,000 kilograms, or even more. This much corn can feed hundreds of people. And this is just corn, if it were replaced with other cereals, it might be even more." Finally, Lucian stared at John with a burning gaze. "Captain John, with your ability, you are simply a natural talent for logistics. Come on, come with me. With your joining, the logistics department will definitely become the most important department of the Navy. By then, everyone will count on us. Come on, the logistics department is your home." Looking at Lucian, who was already incoherent, John looked embarrassed. "I don't want to go to the logistics department. The staff department is so cool now. Should I go to your logistics department to grow food? I'd be crazy to say yes." Warring states saw that Lucian's words were getting more and more outrageous, as if as long as John joined, the logistics department would have more power than him, a general. "Okay, Major General Lucian, tell your people to go and take inventory quickly." Lucian was still unfinished, still staring at John with fiery eyes, but John didn't answer, so he could only lead his men to pick corn in depression. Warring states said to John with satisfaction, "John, you did a good job. With your ability, we don't have to worry about lack of food. So much food can save us a lot of military expenses. You have made great contributions." Quote. John replied feebly, "General of the warring states period, you have commended me. This is what I should do." This time he wasn't pretending. He did consume a lot of energy, but not all of it was used in corn cultivation. In fact, there are a lot of weeds in the cornfield, which he deliberately created in order to consume his own energy and make himself look very tired. It's just that the weeds he created seemed to be ignored by others, and only the corns remained in their eyes. If you already have this ability, you should use it as soon as possible. Are you fooling us by getting so much corn just now? When everyone was rejoicing, an inappropriate snort sounded out, and the vice admiral who had just scolded John came out again and scolded John very dissatisfiedly. John's expression suddenly changed. Who the hell is this guy, looking for trouble one after another? John couldn't refute, but someone was unhappy. His immediate superior, he, looked at the vice admiral and said, "Lieutenant General Favors, any ability requires an adaptation period. It is the first time for John to grow this kind of food. Doesn't he need to get used to it? John is a member of our staff and was recommended by me. Do you have any dissatisfaction? Yes, you can tell me directly." After being slapped like this by Lieutenant General Favors, who scolded John, suddenly turned very ugly. He opened his mouth but did not continue. Although he was also a lieutenant general, he really couldn't afford to offend The Navy is also divided into factions. Sengoku, Garp and Crane are undoubtedly the Iron Triangle. Sengoku is the general, Garp is the strongest combatant, and Crane commands the high-status staff. Although he is also a lieutenant general, his status is not much worse than a general. Even though Favors is lieutenant general and has a much higher military rank than John, as he said, John represents the staff. Even if other people have any dissatisfaction, you can't scold him in front of Lieutenant General He. It's not to offend anyone. Seeing Favos and he gang getting up, everyone around them looked at each other, but no one sympathized with Favos. In any case, John's ability has been demonstrated, and what follows is bound to be a great achievement. When everyone is cheering, if you insist on finding trouble, you have to do it in front of the crane. Are you not humiliating yourself? Who doesn't know that General He Zhang has always been as calm as water and never loses his temper with anyone? If he doesn't give face like today, he almost never shows up. If he is not really angry, he will definitely not show such dissatisfaction. Boss Newbie, John gave He a big thumbs up in his heart for his move. It was easy to enjoy the shade under the big tree, and the benefits of having a good boss were now reflected. John is still very satisfied with his life trajectory in this world. He was born in a Navy family. He didn't have to worry about food, clothing, housing and transportation since he was a child. He only had to concentrate on his cultivation. Later, after he joined the Navy headquarters, he was cared for by Zepha and now supported by He. So far, he has not encountered any major setbacks. That's the great thing about backgrounds. As the highest officer here, Warring States saw He and Favors getting into a fight, and he quickly made peace. Okay, just stop saying a few words. Then, he asked John, John, how many times can you produce a production of this scale in a day? John was speechless when he heard this. He put in such a painstaking performance just to let them see that his abilities were limited and that he was not as good as controlling other plants in stimulating the growth of crops. But looking at the posture of the Warring States period, it seems that with so much output, I am still not satisfied. It's just that John wouldn't let it get used to him. He didn't want to really work as a logistics worker and grow food all the time, so he explained. General of the Warring States period, this kind of output, calculated based on my physical strength and mental strength, can only be consumed once a day at most for the time being. Otherwise, it will have some impact on me. In the future, when I get used to it, it may be improved. Warring States was silent for a moment, calculating in his mind. The yield of more than 1 acre of corn alone would be more than 1,000 kilograms, enough to fill the stomachs of hundreds of people. It was more than enough. The yield of other miscellaneous grains was almost the same, and the yield of potatoes was higher. It is equivalent to John's ability to feed hundreds of people alone. This is still in the early stages, and it should improve in the future, and the output will only increase. According to the weight of more than 1,000 kilograms a day, plus the food and meat they transport, if you save a little, it should be enough. What satisfied Warring States the most was that the crops produced by John could be stored for a long time, unlike some meat foods, which had a short shelf life. Then let's do this for now, John. Your daily task from now on is to produce as many crops as possible. You don't have to worry about anything else. If you have any requests, just ask them. As long as I can satisfy you, I will definitely satisfy you. With this kind of ability, John alone can be worth the effect of thousands of people, not to mention the relationship with He. Of course, Warring States must win over him. Yes, Warring States General, I will do my best. Seeing that Warring States didn't ask, John was relieved. If he really tried his best and used the method of absorbing the life energy of plants to make crops, it would be no problem to multiply the crops tenfold. But since he had agreed to keep a low profile, John couldn't break it. Compared with all that, his own safety was the most important thing. In the following days, John had to go to promote crops every morning. In order to prevent others from seeing his flaws, he was exhausted every time. Similarly, every day he produced a little more than the previous day, which made people it can be seen that he is making progress. Although John only slightly increased production, it still surprised Warring States and others and completely regarded him as a fragrant steamed bun. The importance of food is self-evident. Even if it is not a war period, it is unique for someone like John to produce grains regardless of the season. With people like this, the Navy will no longer have to worry about food problems in the future. This will definitely save an astonishing amount of military expenses. Even Navy Marshal Sora will only wake up laughing after knowing this. In order to reward John, the Warring States period summoned John and asked him whether he wanted to offset the grain he produced with money or with military merit. Of course, John didn't hesitate at all and chose to compensate with military merit. Just kidding, he is a member of the Navy. It is not easy to get money from the Navy. He will still be in the Navy in the future. Naturally, he does not dare to take money. Military merit is the most real thing. If you want to make money, there are many opportunities, but military merit is not so good. Easy. Warring States personally awarded John the title and promoted him from captain to lieutenant colonel. This was because John was too young. Otherwise, he might have been promoted to the rank of colonel. For others in the Navy, it would be hard to advance to one rank, but he had already been promoted to 2 ranks. In less than 3 years, he had become a training soldier and became a mid-level naval commander and lieutenant colonel. At present, even Sakaski and Porosalino, who were the most outstanding students in the same generation in the past, are also lieutenant colonels, and John is now a colonel at the same level as them. You must know that Sakaski and Porosalino were able to improve so quickly because they captured a large number of pirates and earned military honors from the war, while John was in the rear, unremarkable, easily, the land produces food, and you become a lieutenant colonel. In less than 2 months, John produced hundreds of thousands of kilograms of grains, greatly alleviating the Navy's food crisis. Armed, black domineering appeared in his fist instantly, and John punched Pemberton. Pemberton's fat body was pushed back continuously. "John, do you want to kill me?" Pemberton covered his arms, howled in pain, and shouted angrily at John. "Mistake, mistake." John apologized quickly. "I just wanted to test the armor-colored hockey. I didn't expect it to be so heavy." Pemberton said angrily. "Take me as the touchstone of your domineering power. Do you think I am as perverted as you? I have mastered the armed domineering power so quickly. It can not only harden it, but also wrap around body parts." Can he not be angry? He has learned domineering from his uncle for so long, but it is still not as good as John's months of training. He has only mastered the first step so far. He can only see how domineering can wrap around a small part of the place. The color of black domineering is all over. Haven't been able to show it yet. John came into contact with hockey later than him, but now he can wrap around various parts of his body, displaying the colors of his armed hockey. I didn't expect it to be so soon. John was also surprised by the progress of his mastery of armed color hockey. He didn't know whether it was because his physical fitness had met the requirements, or because he had a high understanding of this aspect. After learning armed color hockey, he quickly mastered it. "If I don't fight you, I'll suffer." Pemberton really doesn't want to be John's sparring partner. He suffers every time. In the past, when John didn't use his abilities, he could compete with John. But now, even if John doesn't use his abilities, he is no match for him. This time the generals of the Warring States period went out in person. "Why didn't you go with your uncle?" John asked Pemberton. "Not long ago, Warring States led a large number of navies and fought a battle at sea with the Golden Lion fleet. Many navies went there. John originally wanted to go, but his current mission was food. Warring States finally did not agree to let him go, but Pemberton also did not go, which made him strange." Pemberton whispered. "My uncle said that this battle is very dangerous. He was worried about me and kept me for various reasons." John was convinced. Your uncle really cares about you. When he is in danger, the first thing he thinks of is you. Pemberton smiled bitterly. "There is no way. My uncle has no descendants, and I am the only one left in the family. He is pointing at me to continue the family line. He definitely doesn't want me to die in the battle. It's okay for you. It doesn't matter whether you go or not. But as for me, I can't even think of going. Making food every day is annoying me to death." John looked distressed. He had long been tired of not having enough food for more than 2 months, but he had no choice. Without orders from above, he couldn't go on an expedition and could only stay in the base and dawdle. Now John feels that there is no place for heroes, and he works hard every day just to deal with the pirates. But because of his ability, he had already arrived in the new world, but he was ordered to stay at the base and make food. It really is the fruit of success and the fruit of failure. John thought that days like this would last forever, but after a while, an opportunity came unexpectedly. John, after just finishing the day's work on the grain production project, John looked exhausted and was about to leave, but suddenly Guillaume, whom he hadn't seen for a long time, came to see him. Hey, it's Guillaume, it's beautiful again. Seeing that it was Guillaume, John immediately greeted him with a teasing smile. That meant that Guillaume was young, and if it were other people in the female barracks, he wouldn't dare to tease her. Those women were more powerful than him. Guillaume rolled his eyes at John. You dare to tease me, do you believe I will tell the Lieutenant General? Hey, don't, I'm just complimenting you. Then next time I'll tell you that you've become ugly, okay? You dare. Guillaume's cheeks puffed up and he glared at John. I won't talk nonsense to you anymore, the Lieutenant General is looking for you. What does the Lieutenant General want from me? John asked. You'll know when you go. All right. John left with Guillaume and went to Lieutenant General Suru's office. Lieutenant General, are you looking for me? After seeing the crane, John immediately asked. He looked at John and smiled slightly. Having been making food for so long, are you already a little impatient? In front of John spoke frankly. He smiled bitterly and said, Lieutenant General, when you promised to bring me to the New World, you asked me to go out to sea to fight. However, after being here for so long, you created something every day. To be honest, I have been dreaming about making food every night recently, and my mind is buzzing. If this continues, I will go crazy. Is it as exaggerated as you said? Both Suru and Guillaume laughed at John's tone. John looked sad. Of course it's an exaggeration. My goal is not to be a food-making machine. If I had known that my ability would be better used to make food, I wouldn't have eaten it. Okay, don't complain in front of me. You have been working hard these days making food. Now a new batch of food has been shipped. The food in the base is enough for the time being, he said. John was immediately overjoyed. Then I don't have to continue making food. Theoretically, there won't be too much food. John's joy instantly froze. Seeing the change in John's face, he shook his head helplessly and sighed. You still have to practice in this city. John chuckled and said, in front of you, even if I have a palace, I still have to restrain myself. Nothing else has improved, but my ability to flatter people has improved a lot. As he spoke, his expression suddenly became serious. I happen to have a mission here that requires me to go to sea. Do you want to go? John was overjoyed and quickly replied, of course. He nodded. It's a government-affiliated country in the New World. It asked our navy for help, saying that their country was being harassed by pirates and wanted our navy to help them solve this problem. Now inside the base, everyone is performing their duties. Although there are still generals here, they cannot be dispatched easily. The other party has not informed us of the specific situation for the time being. If we go there rashly, it will be dangerous. Are you sure you want to go? Quote. John replied righteously. It is our duty as soldiers to eradicate pirates. We cannot shrink back just because of the slightest danger. To put it nicely, it's not like I was so depressed that I just wanted to go out. Guillaume looked on with contempt. John ignored Guillaume's contempt and looked at Crane expectantly. Lieutenant General, let me lead the team, and I promise to complete the mission. He frowned and pondered. She did have this idea, but she was still hesitating. Although John was good, his experience and age meant that whether he could lead an army alone had not yet been tested. If it were anyone else, he would definitely not have such hesitation, because what he was facing this time was not an ordinary pirate group. But John is her favorite junior, and he has been with her for 2 years. He is a decent character and worthy of her training. After hesitating for a moment, he quickly made a decision. Since John didn't want to sit in the rear like her and wanted to be on the front line, he couldn't always be a flower in the greenhouse. When it was time to go out, he still had to go out. John, I can let you lead the team, but the army has military rules. If you can't solve the problem after you go, the responsibility will also be borne by you. The army not only has military honors, but also punishments. Can you accept it? Quote. John didn't hesitate and answered directly, I can accept it. You don't need to think too much about this at all. It is the same no matter where you are. If you have merit, you will have a fault. If you do well, you will have merit. If you do not do well, you will have a fault. Now that you've decided, I'll leave it to you. He nodded. You will lead the team personally this time. I will arrange a warship and personnel for you. This is your first time to lead a team on your own. I hope you are fully mentally prepared. Not only must you be responsible for yourself, you also have to be responsible for your subordinates, and it's not easy to be an excellent commander. In fact, under normal circumstances, it would be most appropriate to let John serve as deputy general, but he knew John well. Although John was respectful in front of her, if he were an ordinary colonel or even a brigadier general, he might not be able to suppress John. John was a very proud person at heart. So after thinking for a long time, he still didn't send any other colonel or brigadier general, letting John take the lead. John is very strong. Sakaski and Porisalino in the same period as him can lead the team on their own, and he also has the qualifications. What makes he slightly relieved is that John still has extremely powerful knowledge, and she understands John's knowledge and color hockey better than others. Different from ordinary people's awakened hockey, John's hockey not only has a wide range, but also has special abilities. Even if he encounters danger, the chance of escape is very high. Not only are you going this time, Guillaume is also going with you. Guillaume, who had been standing next to him, was suddenly shocked. Lieutenant General, should I go too? He said, you have been with me for many years. It is also time for you to go out and practice. You also help me watch this kid and don't let him act randomly. If he gets crazy, he might do something ridiculous. Well, John's face was suddenly filled with astonishment. Did he ask Guillaume to spy on me? In addition to Guillaume, I have also arranged a deputy general for you. He is also a newcomer with strong strength. You will see him when we set off. John asked impatiently, Lieutenant General, when will we set off? What's the rush? Do you think you can just leave if you want? At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I will make arrangements. Then you can go directly to the port. Thank you, Lieutenant General. After John thanked him, he was about to leave, but Crane stopped him. You don't even know the specific content of the mission, where are you going in a hurry? John suddenly slapped his head. Yes, because he could lead the team to sea alone, he was so excited that he forgot about this. He sighed helplessly. As you are, I don't even know if letting you go out is a good thing or a bad thing. After sighing with emotion, he revealed the specific content of this mission. John, what you have to face this time is not an ordinary pirate group, but the Big Mom pirate group. When John heard this, his expression changed. It turned out to be the Big Mom pirates. He had been famous for this pirate group for a long time. Not only in this world, but in his previous life, he knew this pirate group better. In the future, Big Mom, the Four Emperors, and the pirate group headed by Charlotte Lingling, have a huge force and command the all nations. Although in the anime, Charlotte Lingling is not as scary as Whitebeard, in fact, Charlotte Lingling is really a monster-level existence. The current Big Mom pirates have not yet reached the level they later achieved, because Charlotte Lingling's large family business has just begun, and is still far from the dozens of children they will have 30 years later. But even so, the current Big Mom pirates of Charlotte Lingling cannot be underestimated. They are a famous large-scale pirate group in the New World. Although Charlotte Lingling is only in her 30s, she has actually been a pirate for nearly 30 years. She was once a cadre of the Rocks Pirates, and is older than Kaido. John didn't expect that the characters this time were actually the Big Mom pirates, which made him feel a little disappointed. Although he is confident in his own strength, Charlotte Lingling's reputation is too great. With his current strength, he is probably still far away from Charlotte Lingling. Are you going to face Charlotte Lingling directly? John asked. He said solemnly, it's impossible to say for sure, but there is a high probability that Charlotte Lingling will not take action. If Charlotte Lingling had taken action personally, the country would not have persisted until now. There is no doubt about Charlotte Lingling's destructive power. If she took action herself, the island country she asked for help would not be able to sustain it at all. John was relieved now. The Big Mom pirates were very strong, but so far, they mainly relied on the strength of Charlotte Lingling. The eldest of his children is estimated to be in his 20s now. Become a climate. As long as he didn't meet Charlotte Lingling, John was still very confident, but his next sentence made John's expression change. If it is Charlotte Lingling who takes action, you can choose to give up the mission. She is not something you can deal with now. The Navy headquarters has gathered a lot of information about Charlotte Lingling. This woman is definitely the most vicious female pirate on the sea. Looking at the New World, she can also be ranked among the top. John and his group of fledgling Navy rookies may have good potential and strength, but for now, they are far from being a match for Charlotte Lingling. When encountering Charlotte Lingling, the only way to escape is to S choice. Okay, go get ready. After John left, Hekai gave Guion instructions with a serious face. Guion, your task this time is not light. Keep an eye on John. This kid has a strong sense of adventure. I'm afraid he won't be able to handle certain things well. If you bring a phone bug with you, you may encounter problems. If so, please contact me directly. Of course, Guion agreed. Yes, Lieutenant General. When John returned to the dormitory, he immediately went to find Pemberton. Pemberton, I'm going to lead the team out to sea this afternoon. Please think about it. Do you want to come with me? Are you going to sea? And you're also the leader. Pemberton was shocked. What's going on? John complained to him yesterday, saying that there was no place for heroes, and he was going to sea today. John smiled slightly. Yes, it was Lieutenant General he who gave me an order to go to a country to help them deal with the pirate problem. I'm here to ask you if you want to go with me. He wanted to take Pemberton with him, because Pemberton and he were good friends and had good strength. Carrying him would definitely be considered an arm strength. Pemberton hesitated. His uncle was afraid that he would be in danger and asked him to stay at the base. If he followed John out, it would be difficult for his uncle to explain. But if he gives up, he is not willing to give up. He still trusts John, and if John leaves, he will have no one to talk to in the G1 base. Is it dangerous? After thinking for a long time, Pemberton suddenly asked. John couldn't help but rolled his eyes. Brother, you are really cautious. I can't guarantee whether it's dangerous or not. This time we will probably face the Big Mom pirates. If you want to go, I will ask General He to transfer you over. If you don't want to go, forget it. Big Mom, that's a monster. When Pemberton heard that it was the Big Mom pirates, he was even more hesitant. He had been in the New World for a long time, so he naturally knew what kind of monster Big Mom was. Don't worry about monsters or not. We may not meet her this time. She should be a pirate under her command. Don't worry about it. Go or not, just be sure. I will set off in the afternoon. I don't have time to delay you. John urged. Go, I'll go with you. After hesitating for a long time, Pemberton finally made the decision to go with John, otherwise he would find it too boring to stay alone at the base. That's right, John smiled. He hoped that Pemberton would go with him. After all, there were not many people familiar with him here. Pemberton was one of the most familiar. The rest of Porisalino and others had already arrived. Just left. Then pack up quickly, it's probably going to take a while this time. According to he, the country asking for help is relatively far from the G1 base. The round trip, plus the time to deal with things in the middle, is estimated to take at least more than a month, or even longer. I know, call me when you leave. Pemberton entered the room without looking back and began to tidy up. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, G1 base branch port. John, you're too slow. Zhu Yuan shouted at John, very unhappy, which shocked John. What happened to this woman? Did she eat gunpowder? Looking at the time, it was just 3 o'clock, not too late. John was a little puzzled. Since he had the experience of being let go by Garp several times, he is now reluctant to go early. He said 3 points, and he just picked the right one. While he was doubting, suddenly a man wearing brown clothes, dragging wooden clogs, and wearing a brown hat came over. He was smoking a cigar and wearing a Navy Justice coat. Lieutenant Colonel John, Captain Gaji is reporting to you. This man put his hands in his pockets and dragged himself up to John, then saluted gracefully and spoke. John was slightly shocked and asked, Are you the Lieutenant General he selected for me? Yes. Gaji took a puff of his cigar and answered calmly. John twitched the corner of his mouth. Their lineup is really ridiculous. The leader is a lieutenant colonel, and the deputy is just a captain, and he is also a guy who looks like a rogue. He is really what he said, a great newcomer, etc. Suddenly, John's expression changed and he asked Gaji, Is your name Gaji? Gaji was a little confused. Yes, my name is Gaji. Lieutenant Colonel John, do you know me? I don't know him, I just heard it from someone before. John was surprised in his heart, but he didn't show any expression on the surface, but he had already thought of this person's identity. Jia, if he remembers correctly, there will be 2 replacement admirals in the Navy a few decades later. One is Zhu Yuan, whom he knows, code-named Tautu, and the other is Jia, code-named T-Dolphin. It turns out that this is a bonus. Although the future substitute for the admiral is not as good as the admiral, he is certainly not weak if he can become the substitute for the admiral. He is fully qualified to become the powerful newcomer that Lieutenant General he calls him. John nodded, not expecting that this time the lieutenant would also be a famous figure in the future. Peach Rabbit and T-Dolphin, these 2 will be characters in the future, but now, it's hard to say. At least as for Guion, John knew very well that her strength was far inferior to his. John was just surprised, and then asked Guion, how are our troops gathering? What kind of team did the Lieutenant General send us? Guion snorted dissatisfiedly. You are the chief officer this time, why are you asking me? John touched his nose in embarrassment and was about to speak, but suddenly an exclamation rang out. Wow, Miss Guion, you are so beautiful. Even when you are angry, you are still so charming. I am going to get drunk, oh. John felt a chill, goosebumps all over his body, and looked at the nymphomaniac Jia with shocked eyes. Not only him, but also the people around him felt a chill. Because Jia looks very cool and naughty, but he is not small, so in the blink of an eye, he turned into this weird-sounding and weird-looking person. Roll. Guion's reaction surprised John even more. He had never seen Guion lose his temper like this before. He looked like he wanted to kick Kaji away. Looking at these 2 future general candidates, John suddenly remembered that there seemed to be a paragraph in the introduction of these 2 general candidates in the anime that said Cake had confessed to Guion 100 times, but all failed. Thinking of this, John glanced at Jia. This man had a rather distinctive face, especially when he smiled, the whole face became even weirder. It can't be said that he is ugly, but he is definitely not close to being handsome. He even falls short of the standard of ordinary appearance. Look at Guion's tall figure, beautiful appearance, and the beauty mark on the corner of her mouth, which makes her even more charming. Judging from looks alone, these 2 people are indeed not a good match, but this is the world of pirates, not a world based on looks. Handsome people may get more attention, but unhandsome people can also get a lot of respect and admiration as long as they have strength. But the current situation is obvious. Cake is fascinated by Guion, but Guion obviously despises Cake. Cake wasn't angry at all after being scolded by Guion, he still walked around Guion with a smile on his face. When John saw this scene, he shook his head helplessly. This girl from Guion was nice, but John didn't call her. But for some reason, he felt a little unhappy when he saw her being so courteous. Now that the personnel have been gathered, let's get ready to go. As the chief officer this time, John's words were orders. The soldiers who were watching just now immediately acted quickly. John led everyone onto the warship, and he asked Guion, how many people did the Lieutenant General send to me this time? This is a large naval warship. Each warship can accommodate more than 1,000 people. Excluding sailors and miscellaneous personnel, the regular army can also accommodate up to 1,000 people. John took a glance just now and found that there were quite a few soldiers on the warship, probably several hundred. Guion snorted dissatisfied. As a general, you don't know anything, and you still ask me, and I don't know what I want you to do. John smiled slightly. Isn't this because of you? As long as you are here, I don't have to worry about these problems at all, right? Guion didn't talk nonsense to John and answered directly, there are a total of 800 people. Apart from you, the chief officer, the highest rank is the captain. Apart from me, Pemberton you brought, and that annoying one guys, there are 2 more, and the rest are lieutenants, non-commissioned officers, etc. with lower military ranks. 800 people, that's not bad, but I'm the only school officer, so it's a bit embarrassing. The number of personnel was quite satisfactory, but he was the only school officer, which made John feel very depressed. This time we have to deal with the Big Mom pirates. Even if Big Mom does not appear, this preparation is too embarrassing, right? Guion said, don't be ungrateful. The Vice Admiral personally selected this for you. Although he does not have an officer at the rank of a general, his overall strength is not bad. He is an elite soldier in the Navy. It's just a casual comment. Of course I know the Lieutenant General will not treat me badly. John said with a smile, and then said, after the warship is launched, you captains will come to have a meeting with me to discuss this mission. The warship was quickly launched, and then John took the remaining 5 highest-ranking captains to a meeting. The 5 captains, Pemberton and Guion, were familiar to John, but it was the first time for him to meet Cake and the other 2 captains. These 2 unknown captains, one looked to be in his 30s and the other in his 20s, did not have any disrespect for Shangguan, a lieutenant colonel who was only 20 years old like John. They were both very respectful, honest. This is also the norm in the Navy. In most cases, the rank within the Navy is based on strength as the first factor. There may be some who get to the position through other relationships, but there are not many such people. John became a lieutenant colonel at the age of 20. Whatever the reason, it shows that John is not simple. Since they have all been assigned to John's command, unless he is really a fool, it is absolutely impossible to show dissatisfaction or contempt for John, the chief officer. John was very polite and asked, "You two, this is the first time we have met. Please introduce yourselves." The captain in his 30s, with a Chinese character and a serious face, replied, "Luca White, former captain of the G7 branch." Another captain in his 20s also said, "Yarail Niang, captain of our headquarters, second-term trainee of General Zepha." The identities of these 2 people surprised John, especially the second one, Jarl Niang. "Captain Niang, are you a student of Teacher Zepha's second batch?" "If you put it that way, we are still from the same school." Jarl Niang smiled slightly. He didn't mean to show that he was Zepha's disciple, mainly because he knew that John was also Zepha's disciple. Speaking of this relationship would definitely make their relationship go further. The name of Lieutenant Colonel John, when I was in the training camp, I often heard Mr. Zepha mention it and said you were a genius. John chuckled. That's Teacher Zepha's compliment. Compared to Sakaski and Porisalino, I'm still far behind. After saying that, he looked at Luca White again and asked, "Captain White, are you from the original G7 branch? Isn't the G7 branch already being rebuilt? Why didn't you go back?" Captain White's serious face showed a hint of sadness. Why go back? Even if it is rebuilt, it will no longer be the G7 it used to be. All the old partners are gone, and I don't want to go back. It sounds a bit decadent, but John doesn't dare to underestimate this officer. After all, he is an officer who can survive the Golden Lion fleet, and he was specially transferred to his command by Lieutenant General He, which is enough to show that this battlefield veteran is still capable. "Captain White, please forgive me. Sooner or later, our Navy will find the Golden Lion to settle this debt." A veteran, a fellow student. John easily accepted the identities of these 2 people, plus Guion, Pemberton and Kaji. At this moment, John clearly felt that General He Zhang cared about him. Not only did he agree to lead his team to sea alone, he also arranged for him to trust reliable subordinates. If it were Garp, he wouldn't have expected such thoughtfulness. He would probably just give him a warship and let him handle the rest by himself. Garp can definitely do this kind of thing. "Everyone, you probably don't understand this mission very well yet, so let me explain it." John cleared his throat and then spoke. "We are going to an island country this time, which is a certain distance away from the G1 branch. Of course, this is not the key. The key is that the pirates we are going to face this time are not ordinary pirates. Thieves. Big Mom pirates, I believe you have all heard of them." "Big Mom pirates, are we going to face them this time?" Veteran White suddenly looked shocked. He was a veteran of the New World and naturally knew all the big pirates in the New World. Big Mom Charlotte Lingling is definitely a big pirate in the New World. It is not an exaggeration to say that she is the most vicious female pirate. In terms of strength and power, she is top-notch in the New World. White, who didn't care much at first, suddenly became very serious. John nodded and said, "Yes, it is the Big Mom pirates. However, it is not yet certain whether they will meet Charlotte Lingling, but if they do, Lieutenant General, our order is that if you encounter Charlotte Lingling, you can abandon the mission and leave. This time we have a total of 800 people, but because we don't know the specific situation of the opponent yet, we have to wait until we reach the destination before we can make the most correct combat plan. I called you here because I want us to get familiar with each other first. I need your help in the next mission." White was the first to speak. Lieutenant Colonel John, it is the duty of soldiers to obey orders. As long as you give the order, even if it is the Big Mom pirates, so what? You can still fight. Although the Big Mom pirates are very strong, White is only surprised, not afraid. If they really fight, he will not be afraid. That's right, so what about the Big Mom pirates? There's no need to be afraid of them at all. Yarail Niang also shouted loudly. Pemberton and Guion didn't speak. They had the closest relationship with John, so naturally they were the only ones following John's lead. As for Jiaji, he smiled and said nothing. Although he was arranged to be John's lieutenant, he had no intention of currying favor with John. He just regarded it as a mission. He cared more about Guion than John. From the first moment he saw Guion, he recognized that she was his goddess. John didn't care about Jiaji's attitude. Jiaji was not very old either, so it was human nature to be dissatisfied with him. He was different from White and Niang. One of the two was a veteran and the other was his classmate. They would definitely not be against him. There was objection to his order. As long as Jiaji doesn't go against him, John will let him go. In fact, if Lieutenant General he hadn't personally selected the lieutenant, John would have wanted Pemberton to be his lieutenant. The warship quickly left the G1 branch and headed towards their destination this time. Although the journey is far away, because they are fully prepared this time, John and the others are not slow. With permanent pointers, they only need to move in the direction indicated by the pointer. When food and other reserves are insufficient, they will land on the passing islands to supply supplies. There are pirates ahead. It is true that there are a large number of pirates in the New World, but that is also relative. The New World is such a huge sea area, and pirates are scattered everywhere, so naturally they are not conspicuous. John and the others drove all the way, and it was only on the third day that they encountered the first wave of pirate forces. Did you recognize the other party's pirate flag? John had already spotted the other party without using a telescope. Guion immediately responded, "It's a pirate flag I've never seen before. It's probably not a well-known pirate group. Since they are not a well-known large pirate group, there is no need for tactics. Just go directly and kill them. If it is a well-known pirate group, naturally it cannot rush over so rashly, and it needs to arrange certain tactics." But since it was not a famous pirate group, John didn't think about arranging tactics and just used brutal methods to kill them all. "Yes, Commander John." The warship immediately accelerated and rushed towards the pirate ship. Facts have proved that the New World is not all full of powerful pirates. As soon as the warship rushed over, the pirate ship had already started to escape. Kill. The performance of naval warships is much stronger than that of most pirate ships. Although the pirate ship has begun to escape, it still cannot avoid the fate of being caught up. After catching up, the Navy soldiers naturally did not hesitate, and quickly opened fire, breaking the pirate ship into pieces, then rushed over to engage in a battle, and quickly destroyed the pirate ship. Because he had a mission, John naturally would not waste time for these pirates. After catching the pirates, he immediately issued an order to kill them without mercy. Without even interrogating, he asked his soldiers to kill all these pirates. Is this really good? Shouldn't he be arrested and sent to prison? After doing all this, Guion asked John hesitantly. John snorted coldly. "We have a mission, we don't have time to delay with them, and we only have one warship. If we don't kill him, how can we stay on the warship?" Although he is not as extreme as Sakazuki, he is also intolerant of pirates. If he has time, he may choose to arrest them, send them to prison, and receive a lot of bonuses. But now, compared to these unknown pirates, his mission is more important. Aren't they just a few pirates? Just kill them. Niang, who was following John, very much agreed with John's choice. Veteran White also said solemnly, "Since you have decided to go to sea and become pirates, then these people are not innocent. There is actually not much difference between putting them in prison and killing them all." Thoughts like White's are the normal thinking of the Navy. The vast majority of the Navy kills pirates without mercy and has no tolerance. Cake also laughed and said, "Beautiful Miss Guion, there is no need to speak for these pirates. Instead of paying more attention to me than those idiots. Roll." Guion was scolded every day, and Guion was unwilling to say even one more word to Cake. John changed the topic and asked, "How far are we from our destination?" Guion's current job seems to be like John's housekeeper. If you have any questions, ask her. Although she says she is dissatisfied, in fact, she still answers truthfully every time. According to the permanent pointer and the display on the chart, it is estimated that it will take some time. John looked serious. It seems we have to speed up. The Lieutenant General has asked us to resist within 7 days. I guess there won't be much of a problem there within 7 days, but after 7 days, it's hard to say. Pemberton interjected. I will go over now and let them speed up. As long as there is no stormy weather, the time should be enough. A few days later. John, we're almost there. Is it finally here? These boring days are finally coming to an end. Before John could say anything, Kate couldn't help but cheered, swaying and jumping next to Guillaume, very lively. The people on the boat were already familiar with Jaji's courtship-like performance, and they all turned a blind eye and focused on John. Stop near the port. I believe the news that we have arrived will be known soon. It won't be long before someone comes looking for us. Just wait. John said slowly that their destination this time is this island. This island is ruled by a country, which is the host who asked the Navy for help this time. There are not many island countries like this in the world, but island countries are also different. Some island countries are very powerful, while others are very weak. This island country called Rhodes is much worse than a big country like Dressrosa, but it is precisely because of this that they choose to take shelter under the world government, become a franchise country, and are willing to receive gold from the sky. Since it is a franchising country, if a crisis occurs, it can naturally ask for help from the Navy. But it can only be said that they are not very lucky, and the current situation of the Navy is not very good, so that they cannot send better candidates. Otherwise, at least a fleet led by a major general will be dispatched. After all, this time they will face the Big Mom pirates. John was right. Before they reached the port, they were discovered by people from the Rhodes country and reported quickly. They didn't wait long at the port. Soon a group of guards came to the port and found John and the others. We are the guards of the kingdom. His Majesty the King sent us to greet everyone in the Navy. Please follow us to the royal city. These guards, after seeing John and the Navy, were very respectful. As the king's personal soldiers, they knew very well the disaster the kingdom was encountering, and these Navy were their life-saving straw. Then let's go. John was not polite, leaving most of the people behind and going with only a few people. These guards were also well trained. Although they looked at John and others with curious eyes from time to time, they did not ask. It was a long distance from the port to the royal city. John and the others followed the guards and passed through multiple blocks and avenues until they finally arrived at the royal city and went straight to the palace. After entering the palace, John quickly met the King of Rhodes. The King of Rhodes was a middle-aged man in his 40s. When he saw John coming with several Navy, he was very surprised. As a king, he knew something about the Navy and could tell the ranks of the Navy. Therefore, when he saw that the leader was actually a young man in his 20s, who was only a lieutenant colonel, his face suddenly became unsightly. But after all, he is the king of a country, and he still has a city. He still greeted John and the others warmly. Welcome to all our naval friends. Isn't your commander here? When John and others heard this, they were stunned at first, but they quickly reacted, especially John, who grinned. Lovers think they don't have enough coffee spots. Dear His Royal Highness, I am the chief officer this time. You. King Rhodes was stunned for a moment. He asked the Navy for help, hoping that the Navy would send powerful figures. After all, their enemy this time was the Big Mom pirates. But he never expected that the Navy actually sent a Navy lineup led by a lieutenant colonel, which made him very dissatisfied. What we have to face this time is the Big Mom pirates. Can you stop them with just a few of you? King Rhodes couldn't keep his temper anymore, and immediately started mocking John and the others without giving them any face. The faces of John and others became very ugly. Although they did not have high military ranks, they worked hard to come here to solve the problem. Now, before I even have time to speak, I am being despised by others. Who can bear it? John replied calmly. Your Majesty, whether you can block it or not, you have to try to know. But we don't have the ability for you to try. The Big Mom pirates have given you an ultimatum. If we don't agree to their request, they will bloodbath our country. You simply cannot afford such serious consequences. A young man in the hall suddenly rushed out and shouted excitedly at John and the others. Our country has paid so much heavenly gold as tribute to the world government, just to be protected. But now, we have explained that the situation is urgent, and your navy has only sent a few of you. You are too bullying. Crooked Melon and Cracked Date. The faces of Pemberton and others became even more ugly. After all, they were elites in the navy, but now they were called crooked by an ordinary person. They were all very angry, and their eyes were focused on John. John is also extremely unhappy. Yes, their military rank is low, but it's too unpleasant for you to talk like this. Whether we go wrong or not is not up to you. After saying that, I saw a tree suddenly growing next to the person who just spoke. The young man was instantly entangled and struggled to move. Father, save me! The young man screamed in horror. King Rhodes also looked at John in shock and anger. Is it you? John looked at him and said calmly, I just want to prove to you whether we are wrong or not. Why are you so arrogant with us? If you have the ability, go and be arrogant with the pirates. The young prince roared. John nodded. You're right. I really shouldn't prove anything to you, but if I don't do anything, it will only make you look down on us even more. Let us solve this trouble. King Rhodes looked gloomy. What are you going to do to solve it? That's Big Mom. With just a few of you young people, there's no way you can be her opponent. Did she attack you personally? John asked. Well, that's not the case. It's just that her son gave us a warning. Charlotte Lingling, maybe we may not be able to deal with it, but there is still no problem in dealing with her son, but you have to tell me, why did the Big Mom pirates come to your country and do what they did to you? Warn. John still hasn't figured out why the Big Mom pirates came to the Rhodes country, and even Crane hasn't figured it out yet. Because the Rhodes country just sent out a request for help and did not explain the specific reason. They just said that the opponent was the Big Mom pirates. I don't know if they didn't say it on purpose or for some other reason. In short, before this, it must be clarified before we can prescribe the right medicine. King Rhodes looked gloomy and slowly explained the reason. Although our kingdom of Rhodes is not a big country, the living conditions of our country's citizens are no worse than those of those big countries, because our country has a special characteristic and is good at making desserts. The vast majority of citizens can make desserts in various ways, so many countries will buy desserts from us. Our country also has a sales channel to facilitate its citizens. Quote, this is a good thing, but because of this, it attracted the Big Mom pirates. They made a request to us that our country must pay a large portion of desserts to them every year, otherwise they will destroy us. Quote, it is precisely because we were unable to resist the Big Mom pirates that we asked your navy for help. Unexpectedly, the navy only sent you people. The Big Mom pirates gave us half a month to think about it. Tomorrow is the deadline. This time our Rhodes country is really going to end. As King Rhodes spoke, his expression became extremely depressed, and he did not have any hope for John and the others. Dessert. Just for dessert. Except for John, the other Marines were confused. They didn't understand the Big Mom pirates or Charlotte Lingling. To others, destroying a country for dessert is very ridiculous, but Charlotte Lingling is different. She can definitely do such a thing for dessert. Even in the anime, she got sick and almost destroyed all her kingdoms because of the cake. This woman is a real madman. John said in a deep voice. Charlotte Lingling is extremely fond of sweets. She may indeed attack a country for desserts. King Rhodes asked dissatisfiedly. Since you know how scary she is, why did you just send out these people? John said coldly. Our navy has our own difficulties. It is not easy for us to come over. Now that we are here, we will do our best to help you solve the problem. King Rhodes still didn't believe it. I don't think you can do it. You should contact the top brass of the navy as soon as possible. It's best to ask your Navy Admiral Sengoku to come. If he comes, he will definitely be able to stop Big Mom. John looked at King Rhodes in shock. This guy's requirements were really high. He actually wanted the warring states general to come in person. Now there are only 2 generals left in the Navy headquarters. One of them, Zepha, is still retired and relies on Sengoku to support his appearance. Now Sengoku's entire attention is focused on the crazy expansion of the Golden Lion pirates, so how can he have time? Mind other things. The Warring States General is busy and has no time. Your navy is too irresponsible. and the world government doesn't take us, the participating countries, seriously. Prince Rhodes, whose city was inferior to that of King Rhodes, was still roaring angrily even though he was still tied up by John. John Cheng Sheng said, "The new world is very chaotic now. There are many situations like yours. There is only one general in the warring states period. How can he have so much time to deal with so many things at the same time?" "Okay," King Rhodes shouted low. Although his eyes were full of distrust, there was no other way now. Tomorrow was the deadline. Even if warring states was free now, it was too late. "Since you said you would deal with the Big Mom pirates, if you can't do it, don't blame me for complaining to the Navy. Now King Rhodes is a dead horse and a living doctor. The worst result is that if he pays a lot of deserts, the Big Mom pirates will not really destroy their country. After all, for Charlotte Lingling, deserts, that's the most important thing. Whatever you do, is tomorrow the deadline? Let's meet the Big Mom pirates for a while." John didn't take complaints to heart at all, and he was not afraid of being complained. Even a complaint from the king of a country could not shake the Navy's system. "Your Highness the King, please don't bother you to arrange accommodation for us. We will be on the warship. If the Big Mom pirates come tomorrow, please notify us immediately." John didn't want to have any more entanglements with King Rhodes. After putting down his words, he left directly with Guion and others. "Hey, let me go, let me go." John had just taken a few steps when Prince Rhodes, who was tied up by him, struggled hard and shouted, "Oh, I forgot about you, sorry." John seemed to suddenly remember, but he didn't see any movement. The branches that tied Prince Rhodes slowly loosened and let go of Prince Rhodes. Watching John and the others leave, the Prince of Rhodes was still angry. "Father, these navies are definitely unreliable. We have to be prepared to bleed." King Rhodes sighed heavily. Although his son's words didn't sound good, he thought they were right. Even with these young boys, he didn't think they were reliable. "If it really doesn't work, we have no choice but to do that. The worst we can do is hang up the banner of the Big Mom pirates. Even the world government will not be able to condemn us by then. The people they send are unreliable. The gold in the sky that comes once every 4 years is a lot, but we have to pay more than the lion's mouth of the Big Mom pirates. It's all those navies' fault. They claim to be the strongest military force on the sea, but in the end they couldn't even resist a mere pirate. It's so disappointing." Prince Rhodes snorted in displeasure. Wow, suddenly there was a sound, and then Prince Rhodes felt himself being pushed by something. He staggered and almost fell. In anger, he was about to curse, but the next moment, he froze. He saw that the tree that had just tied him was growing rapidly, completely violating the laws of natural ecology. It was growing rapidly. He was hit because the tree became bigger and thicker. The palace of the royal palace is more than 10 meters high, but the rapid growth of this tree has reached the top, pushing open the solid roof and continuing to grow. It took dozens of seconds for the tree to stop growing, but its size and height shocked everyone in the palace. King Rhodes and others were unable to drive outside, but they could clearly see that the tree was so thick that it could only be hugged by several people. It would take at least dozens or hundreds of years of trees to hold it, can grow to this extent. "It's that Navy, it must be that Navy, he's taking revenge on us." After the shock, the Prince of Rhodes roared excitedly. He felt that this was John's revenge. This is indeed the case. What they just said was heard by John, so he encouraged the trees to grow, taught them a lesson, and frightened them. King Rhodes also looked at this scene in shock. As a king, he knew about devil fruits. He was already sure that the naval lieutenant colonel who just talked to them was definitely a person with abilities who had eaten devil fruits. He, who had no hope before, suddenly felt a glimmer of hope in his heart. That young lieutenant colonel seems to be really capable, but I don't know if he can stop the Big Mom pirates. If they can really stop it, that would be the best. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.